Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 234. Getting up there.
Getting up there.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. Those are meaty episodes. Those are like, I think our the shortest episode we have is like an hour and a half, but most of them are around 3 hours. So
yeah.
234 times, let's say conservatively 2.5 hours. This is a lot of content.
It's a lot of hours of
pity the fool who's starting at 1.
That's why when people are like, remember when you said this? I'm like, no. No. And I've gotten a lot older at doing this. So I don't remember anything. Thank you for joining us for episode 234. In this episode, we are going to be doing a discussion around, and this is going to sound, you were calling Josh a nerd earlier, Jody. We're going to be talking about the sociology of gaming groups, how they form, why they form, what there's some benefits, what are some drawbacks, how do people manage through them, kind of from here to there. So I think it's kind of an interesting discussion. We're trying something a little bit different. I think last episode we tried something a little bit different. That was a very popular episode. We got a lot of great feedback on that one.
Yeah, that was great to watch.
Oh, thanks for saying watch.
Yeah.
Josh appreciates that. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, you should. We do a lot of pretty cool stuff there, and we're actually looking at trying some new stuff pretty soon. There was something else I was going to throw in there, but I can't remember what it is. So let's just talk about right away. This show sponsored by our two patrons on our Patreon, Craig Sniffin and Pixels of Grim. I was waiting for Jody to laugh.
He's keeping it straight this time.
Yeah. Craig Sniffin, Pixels of Grim. Yeah. I don't know. All right. Anyway. Okay. So, thank you again, guys. Thanks. Obviously that's not Pixels of Grim is probably not his real name, I'm guessing.
It's on the birth certificate. I've seen it.
But, thank you so much for your support, your ongoing support. We super appreciate it. We've started, doing our, hobby hangouts, the Grimdark Guild. We ran a few technical issues with Caleb on
poor Caleb's bandwidth. It must have been the storm.
I didn't watch the follow-up video.
I did a quick scrub through and didn't notice any of his his latency issues that we were having during the live version.
Certainly live we noticed a bunch of it. So anyways, we're also looking at getting more guests on there too.
Absolutely.
Jody might be one of those.
We were just talking about it on the drive.
Yeah,
over.
it's super fun.
Yeah.
And it keeps me painting, which is great.
Exactly. You are doing a lot of that.
I am. So unless I'm missing something, let's roll into Elite Choice.
Sounds good.
Okay. My Elite Choice. Will Yasui. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. And this Winged Hive Tyrant he did.
Yeah.
Kind of came in late. Like I was watching for the last couple of weeks. And again.
Spoiled for choice.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was hard to pick just one.
Dude.
And when I pick one, I feel like, there were some other things, like this guy did some great chaos stuff that I thought was really cool. But ultimately, I chose this because of the detail work, the blending. Yeah. It's such a great model to begin with, but like every aspect of his paint scheme here really came together. I think it's a fantastic version of a Tyrannid. So that's my pick.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Will.
I really love the bone sword on this.
For sure.
The detail on that, and just the way that he's got the light hitting it and the bone and the red kind of blend together. And then the veins, like that psychic kind of pulsing hive mind vein look on the side of the head there. Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, the sword jumped out to me. That it's like working in two different ways. One, it's the throwback to like the 90s red.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So there's that. The other hand though is it's like sinew and muscle stretched over bone. That's what, as you're butchering a bone or a piece of meat, it looks pretty much like that, which totally fits for Tyrannids.
Oh, that's a really great observation. I don't
know if that's the intention, but it
does look like that.
It feels familiar in that way.
Like a T-bone steak in half right there.
Yeah.
Yum.
That's cool. Just the blending on it is done really well. The whole model's done superbly.
Yeah, it's great.
And those striation marks. Every time I see Tyranids, I look for that and I look at how did they do it, because I know how I've done mine and I get sloppy after a while. I'm just like, okay.
You're going to run out of models to paint this year, so you might have to go back and touch up the Tyranids.
Honestly, I am kind of leaning into the how many days in a year, how many models have I painted type of thing. I've certainly exceeded the number of points, but like I want to see how many models I can actually get painted this year.
Yeah.
So
you're on a great start.
I'm on track
to a good roll.
So that was my choice.
Yeah. Do Legions Imperialis, man.
There's
I think I'm done already.
There's 100 models in one.
I count
one
each
box
individual
set.
attack marine on that base.
You painted
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I did. Exactly. That counts.
Josh, what did you pick?
Yeah. So I went with Neil Tweed Striking Scorpions.
Shell almost had picked these.
Yeah,
by the way.
these were fantastically done. They're absolutely love the sculpts. They're so true to the original Jess Goodwin.
Yeah.
But kind of modernized, proportions a little bit more true. The detail is so crisp.
These are the new plastic ones.
Yeah, these are the
we're looking
new plastic.
Yeah.
Yep, Scorpions. Just a classic green and yellow, really crisp, really beautifully called out detail with those kind of subtle edge highlights, and then just the overall. Just what's going on. It's working for me.
Yeah.
I love these models. This one, not only is it well done, but it actually made me really excited to jump those up on the paint queue and start tackling mine sooner than later.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, those are beautiful, beautiful work.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Jody.
I went with Chris Box, who finished his 4th War Dog for his Adepticon list. He also has since finished up his Knight Rampager. You can find that on the page. Just really enjoy the chaos conversion. My old school spiky, pokey, converted chaos roots said I had to pick these.
Skulls, spikes, chains.
For the spike and skull and chain blood for the blood, bro. God, bro. These, what's one of the comments down below actually is what really put these over for me is somebody talked about how great that army is going to look as a force on the table.
Force. It is.
And it is with the hazard striping and the bits of red with the little bit of rune work and then the just kind of blacked out armor elsewhere and the conversions. It's all those little things that just makes armies pop. It's funny how often I'll notice as walking around, we've talked about it in the past, that you go to Adepticon and you see a million armies
And they're all painted good.
and they're all, they're all
Too
look nice.
excellent.
So what jumps out isn't necessarily technically whose army's painted's best. In fact, that tends to have a flattening effect. There has to be something else that is a contrast element or a scale element, of which this has both. So
Yeah,
play to my loves of just spiky chaos whatnots, because I do love me some spiky chaos whatnots.
Yeah.
But then also just really enjoyed the conversions. And then the centerpiece, the Rampager, I'll double dip on that. It has this bright green carapace as well. Looks really cool. So it will be a really standout list. So I'll see if I can find it and say what's up to Chris.
Yeah.
I looked at these and I was like, I didn't do enough conversion on my War Dogs.
Well, I was actually just made me wonder because I haven't been a Chaos player since 2nd edition other than Demons. So how much of this is bits in the box versus these are scratch or
So
kit
the
bash
ones I
related?
have, I think, were the Imperial ones. And I just threw a few spikes on them and whatnot. I think there's also a Chaos.
Because yours are fairly Chaos light from a modeling standpoint.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have a lot of the Chaos stars and things like that you've added with decals and painting. But I know the new Chaos Knight kit has a ton of chaosy bits in there.
Yeah. I think that's what these are. And I'm kind of like, oh man, I should have.
Certainly the 4th one has the skulls from the skull bits and the extra spikes in the shoulders. So that 4th one, definitely. I think the first 2 are pretty stock, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. But they're different than the
great.
options I had in my box is my point. So I think there's a Chaos Rhino and there's a Rhino.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same thing. Anyway, I've clearly bought the wrong set.
You may have bought it before the Chaos version.
I think I did. I think I bought them when they first. You know what? I bought them so long ago. Who knows at this point?
Hey, they look great. You're happy with them.
I am.
You can add some chains later on if you really want to.
If I really want to. Yeah, we won't go back.
When you're repainting the Tyranids, add some chains.
Sure. I'm sure there won't be anything else out by that point that I've bought. So Shell, I kind of read her the Riot Act too. I was like, listen, did I bring this up? I brought this up on the
hobby hangout.
On the hobby hangout.
She's been very active on the
but she's
in
not,
the community, but hasn't been making her shells kits.
Yeah, she's not doing her work. So she's like, okay, I'll go through, I'll look, and I'll pick something. And she had a hard time picking as well. But ultimately, she landed on David McIntosh and his beautiful Harlequin themed Eldari. She loved the color combination, the diamond patterns on everything, so the 3 there's one model that has 3 guys on one base, so it looks like he's kind of
got that holographic speed.
Like he's moving super fast.
Motion blur almost.
It's super cool,
form, which is really cool.
And here's the thing: I have a ton of Harlequin stuff for her. It's still on sprue in a box over there it came with the 2 different sets. There was a Chaos and Harlequin set. Or no. It was but there was a Death Watch versus Harlequins
Okay.
box set that came out. I have a full box of this stuff, and she's like, "Oh well, man, maybe I should do some Harlequins." I'm like, and when Shell says I should do,
Carl, give me some Harlequins painted.
look, I gotta dig in and be like, well, if you want them done, you're gonna have to help paint because this is silly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really hate Dave McIntosh at this point because if I have to paint diamonds on something,
Stencils me.
yeah. Oh, just stencils. It's
Just a couple triangles.
Just a couple triangles. That's what I was gonna say.
It's just squares.
And literally, these are a couple triangles.
It actually is. This would have been my elite choice had Shell not.
It's so
not
good
grabbed.
looking.
Yeah, the hollow effect on the one. The
Really
night looks
cool.
great.
Yeah.
The kind of cold,
Yeah.
the cooler greens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like there's some smart color wheel choices there of the blues and the kind of colder greens, but then also the purple. It's just
vibrant and desaturated at the same time, which works really well. Yeah.
It's so
has
funny.
that shadow look. It's great.
We called her out on it, and she's like, "I'm never gonna pick another purple model or something with kids again." I'm like, "Don't say that." I mean, those are the things you like.
Oh
It's
yeah.
fun.
Somebody's got to.
That wasn't good fun.
She got all upset.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my fault.
She didn't really get upset.
What you did now.
She never really gets upset. Anyway, so great stuff there.
Yeah.
Great work by everybody.
So many more things that got posted that didn't get called out here that were absolutely incredible. You guys are knocking it out of the park.
It is becoming harder and harder to pick.
Yes.
Like I don't know what it is, but there's like this uphill thing that's going on where people are just like posting like better and better stuff lately, or it's just become more active, or people are doing more painting, or I don't know what it is, but it's blowing my mind. So
Whatever it is, it's working.
yeah. So
it's exciting.
Keep it going. Keep it going. All right. Let's take a short break. We'll come back, do hobby progress, games played, that kind of stuff. So we'll be right back. All right, and we're back, and let's launch right into hobby progress. And Jody, since you are back, you haven't been here for a while, let's start with you.
Okay.
And let's hear a little bit about what you've been doing.
Some stuff. Let me see. So
I want to hear my favorite two words over and over again.
Oh, okay. Well, you will.
yeah, you are.
Get ready, Brace. I'm going to do a couple other things first, but we'll keep you in suspense.
All right.
Matt and I just finished up an episode of The Crush covering Blackrush. The Crush. I am taking
For the uninitiated, The Crush is your podcast on Blitzball.
That's correct. Yeah. So Matt and I have our Blitzball podcast. We wanted to find the most niche market possible. All three of our listeners seem to really enjoy the show.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, you put out what, an episode every 6 months?
No, that's Brian
Lately,
show.
no, we're there too now.
Oh.
Yeah. Real life is
But
real.
also, like, how much can you talk about Blitzball?
A surprising
About
amount
50
turns out.
episodes.
No, yeah, agreed. But now it's like
I'm on the independent characters.
you gotta wait. Hey, listen, you gotta wait for like new material to kind of come out.
We do.
Yeah,
And to be fair, thank you, God. Nobody else does that for me. We're down to Snotlings. We've covered all the Ultimate Edition, which is the most current edition. Yeah. There's new teams come out with each edition, so we have one left to go, and then we'll have to figure some things out. So
I do like Blitzball. Like I don't like Blood Bowl.
Well, it's because you have a pulse,
but I do like Blitzball
because that's the right
It's
answer.
the best flavor of Blood Bowl ever.
There it is.
I actually agree. I think Blood Bowls are just too many rolls too slow for me.
It's a great video game.
Blitzball super fast.
Yeah, except for the dice roll is terrible.
There's that. I'm taking I wanted to call it. I'm taking the Dan Boyd approach to hobby progress from now on, and 40K, 40K. I'm just talking about what I did in the hobby. So because I noticed there was a lack of 40K in his hobby progress, but he carried the segment.
There's a whole bunch of
song of
Soyaf.
Yeah. But speaking of 40K, I did finish up my combat patrol of Iron Warriors. It's totally done.
Looks really good.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Got the Dark Apostle conversion finished out. It was funny. Last episode, you were talking about having those old chaos bits. Mm-hmm. And 2 of those bits were central to that conversion. Replacing the chest because the Dark Apostle is an older model, small. Needed to build up the smokestacks in the back on it. And
you want a whole box of chaos bits?
No, I do not. But was stoked to get those totally done. Just waiting on Cliff, who and I are going to do some specifically combat patrol games. He has 1 model left to finish out. So hopefully this will get him over the hump so we can start doing that.
I'm actually going to be playing in a combat patrol tournament in July. I know it does exist.
Where?
It's at the Tacoma Open. And
I have some free time in July.
It's just a bonus thing on top. Like it's in the evenings after all the events are done. They're doing a combat patrol tournament free to join. So I'm going to double dip on there. Interesting. Actually super excited to play it. So
genuinely surprised that wasn't a thing at Adepticon.
Yeah,
it just seems such an easy, here.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I get why for a lot of folks it's not your bag, but for me, I was like, where I'm at with 40K, I'm so excited about it. Okay, so Legions Imperialis.
There it is.
Hey, all right. So I finished up a box and a half of Solar Auxilia Infantry. They're totally done. Plus, it's a box and a half because I got some extra Ogren and Sentinels. I bought the Solar Auxilia half of the starter from Craig. And I really just needed the tanks because you can't get Layman Russes or Malkadors at all. They're not available yet.
Yeah.
So it had the infantry with it, which I didn't need particularly, but extra Ogren and extra Sentinels are good. So I painted
eventually.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And eventually
let me just say your
infantry.
stuff looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It really does.
Like it almost makes me want to play Solar Auxilia.
You know, what was fun about it was,
But they really do look good.
I really appreciate it because there were some techniques of trying at that scale to also do some kind of classic Imperial armor style weathering a little bit and taking some of those ideas into the tanks, not at full scale or full like what's that? The color modulation thing you do with the oil paints. Like ain't nobody got time for that. But except Ivan, who's looks great on his Iron Warriors.
Yes.
But there was some of that, so I appreciate that very much. Like I was happy that it has that look a little bit. So I was stoked on that. Got my knights based on proper Legion Imperialis, Adeptus Titanicus knights.
Yeah.
On Legions Imperialis bases.
Yeah.
Somebody else posted on this, and I just want to take a beat here. Maybe we can do some good. Games Workshop shipping. What the heck, guys?
Oh my God. Are you going to talk about how you get a huge box with the
I got a box that was maybe 12 by 6 by 8, or I got 2 of those boxes. One of them had a bunch of bags of bases. Each set of bases was in a plastic bag. And I understand for inventory and plugging, that's sure. The second box had 1 bag and 1 base in it. What are we doing?
Listen, it's not just Games Workshop. Amazon does the same thing. I ordered a bunch of magnets. They came in a box that's, 10 inches by 8 inches by 6 inches. Two little bags of magnets. I'm like, you can throw these in an envelope?
It's 2 separate boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Both of which could have been one bag.
You can't let those things cross.
Yeah, apparently the 150 mil base could not be with the other. They'd had a disagreement in their group and they could not get along. So
we'll actually cover that later in this episode.
Why those 2 bases couldn't be in a box together anymore. I did a palette
of bases.
There it is. I did a little palette cleanser after reboxing and finishing a lot of infantry, as we talked about in the Legions Imperialis episode. The Legions Imperialis infantry it's monotonous.
It's fun.
Yeah. I was ready for something different. So I did a palette cleanser, did a little dwarf wizard. I'm working on a project I'm calling the Noble 32, which is it's to have the 4 basic D&D classes represented by the 4 classic D&D races. Yeah. And then having a male and female version of each character.
That's kind of cool.
So for something I'll talk about in games played that is relevant to the episode, but not relevant to 40K, there's a reason for doing that. So he gets a shout out here. I did a little dwarf wizard because you don't see a lot of dwarf wizards running around.
No, you don't.
I finished my second starter set of the aforementioned Solar Auxilia, 6 tanks. So the 4 Layman Russes and 2 Malkadors are all totally done. Magnetized the Malkadors with the wrong size magnets and ended up screwing up a couple of them, was really grumpy, and I am not good at magnets and will not be doing that again, or I'll talk to Aaron. That went poorly. I 3D printed and cleaned my Epic Legions Imperialis tokens. I bought a set from Dark Art Miniatures on my mini factory. actually really like they have Loyalist and Traitor in the one kit of prints. They're a little bit smaller than the ones Josh initially shared with me, but they still have some nice height to them, so they're easy to grip on and off the table.
If you send me the link, I'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome. Will do. Yeah. And was really happy with the size and kind of thickness of them. And they're printed, cleaned. Weird enough, the cleaning on them took a really long time because print marks. And that was a software error, as we've talked about. It's learning how to support things properly is the learning curve of 3D printing. The mess part you figure out pretty quick. The resin printing, how to get supports dialed in for your climate and your space and these were over supported. So grumble, but they're done, and I'll do the chaos ones later, and it'll go way better.
Grumble.
Grumble. Do you pull your supports off before curing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Is that an option?
Yeah, but
it's the wrong option.
It's the wrong option because there's so much more cleanup to do if you don't do it that way. So I was curious of why you had so much extra cleanup.
Because they were pre-supported, and I didn't want to go there because like it's kind of calling the person out. They were pre-supported, and I think they just used the lychee slicer pre-supports, and the lychee slicer will do the micro supports internally too much. Yeah. So
you dared to call Josh a nerd. I'm just saying.
This is if you're 3D printing and setting with supports, this is where you live.
3D printing.
Also, I don't even remember what you were talking about. It was like micro megabit. It was so jargon. It was great jargon. I was
talking about dynamic range of audio.
Yes, that's it.
Because we're recording in 32-bit.
32-bit float audio. It's pretty impressive.
Duh.
This conversation is for Dan Boyd.
All right, keep going.
I am duly impressed.
Keep going. We've gone off the rails already.
Because I finished painting all of my tanks and all of my Solar Auxilia stuff, I therefore purchased 4 Bane blades and have begun assembly and processing for those. Last 4 tanks, the Bane blades are the last thing I need for my Adepticon list. So well within striking distance at time of recording, a couple weeks out still. So
I am trying to follow your lead on that, by the way. Like I've pretty much stopped purchases.
It's a great approach. Yeah.
I did buy a couple things because I had to round out my list, and I tried like all get out, other than 3D printing, I tried like all get out to find these pieces, and it's like, you can't find them. So, okay. All right. I'll buy this box because it has to fill out a list, but I am trying to follow your lead on that. Paint it before I'm buying something new, and especially in Legions Imperialis, but
it's a lot easier to do when you're starting a project with that mindset. If you already have the stuff, it doesn't work. I can't remember. I think
but you can like take it into account, right? And you're thinking about it actively before going, okay, I'm just going to run out and purchase this thing.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, what are the other options I have here? Do I really need this? Is there another way can I trade with somebody? Okay, that's not happening because of course it's the most popular way of setting this thing up. So, okay, fine. I'll spend this. And then I'll talk about it. My turn. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted you to know, like, I really heard your take on that. And I was like, I'm going to this year follow that pretty religiously.
I think if you're working within your existing collection, like you with to get ahead of ourselves, I'm almost done. So your sisters, right?
Yep. We'll get there.
If you're working within an existing collection, the paint one, buy one paradigm works pretty well.
Yeah.
I really, along this purchase topic, as spinning off of last episode, really enjoyed your guys' interview with Christopher. I thought he brought some really wonderful insights.
Yeah.
And the one thing, that comment he made, and I'm going to get it slightly wrong, so please go check the expert, Christopher in this case, of what he had to say about the dopamine thing is about the excitement of the like prospect. Yeah. That's where the dopamine hit is. Man, did that resonate with me. That was a good point.
It's in the chase, not the acquisition.
Yeah, it's not once you've done it, like it's over. That's it. It's that experience of getting to live in that moment. And it made me think about my own purchases that over the pandemic, I've actually been in a collecting mode, just not of miniatures. I've been buying old RPG or weird RPG stuff.
Yeah.
And to that end, I did buy something that is adjacent relevant through Exalted Funeral, which is they're a publishing house for indie RPG stuff. They released Voodoo Forest, which is an art book by John Blanche that was specifically a project he was working on in his free time towards the end of his tenure at GW, because he is now retired. And I bought it just because it sparks joy, to use the phrase, right? It was I want to have this art book, and I'm never sad to have an art book in my collection.
Yeah. Right.
But it was also an acknowledgement of like supporting John Blanche's art in a way that isn't supporting GW.
Right.
So that was also a consideration of like, I am voting with my dollars is a common Carl refrain, right? So it was kind of cool. And it's a beautiful art book. It's undeniably John Blanche's artwork, but it's a fantasy lens and a fantasy musing of his stuff.
Oh, nice.
There's still so many Grimdark and
I love this
techno elements. Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
Funny enough, one of our role-playing friends messaged and he goes, "Hey, you're into this stuff," and sent it to me. And I texted him back. I was like, "Thank you for spending my money, dude." Like I had a choice to say no. But I did have a choice to say no, and I was thrilled to have it. So that was me. I wanted to just kind of close on that purchase though. Very cool. I thought that notion of
that's neat.
of the chase, but then also voting with your dollars. Like, and that's been a big part of anymore when I'm making purchases, the weighting is tied into also going, is this a smaller press company? Is this buying a Pachow t-shirt from Uncle Adam to support Tabletop Minions? Cause I like his videos. I like his take on stuff a lot of the time. So that kind of thing was just another take.
I've taken that kind of beat and taken a step even in board games.
Yeah.
Like we bought a lot of board games and
guilty myself.
And it's been kind of, okay, if we buy this, when am I really going to play this? Like we got a lot of things in the queue. Is this scratching an itch that none of these other things scratch?
Right.
I'm becoming much more, okay, I don't need to have everything. And I'm definitely that episode. We talk a lot about FOMO. I'm definitely acutely aware of what am I actually missing out on here?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I'm just missing out on the chase, again, this Siege of Terra broke me.
Yeah.
Not only did it break Sanguinius, it broke me trying to get that. And, no, not again.
Yeah. Well, and there's an amount of perspective too, right? Like the privilege of perspective is that you've been in the hobby, I think long enough that you're like, I have seen these things.
Yes.
And when I started the RPG purchases of going back and buying 1980s D&D modules,
I did a bunch of that too, though.
That is like, no, these are items from my childhood that have a nostalgia value, which you guys talked a lot about. Yeah. But I've had that perspective, that time to reflect back and go, no, I do want this in my collection.
Yeah.
And
I may never even play with it.
Yeah.
But I can look at it and pull it out and
once in a while I do go through them and I actually will go leaf through them. And then for my own personal black library, that's usually the criteria is like, do I genuinely think I'll go leaf through this? The Realm of Chaos books we did a bunch of episodes ago.
Yeah. Those are great.
I'll bust those out and I'll flip through them every couple of years and really enjoy it. So some of the Imperial Armor books. Totally there.
Yeah, I have. I'm not letting go of those.
No, I'll still go back and look through them. They're just beautiful. Just beautiful works. But that's my hobby progress and other stuff.
Josh, hobby progress. What have you been up to?
Yeah. Legions Imperialis. Here we go.
More?
I oil washed and varnished. So finished off the last batch of tanks that I had been working on in the previous episode. So this was a handful more rhinos, a couple of predators, a couple of Sikaran tanks, and a few Kratos. So this is kind of rounding out the last of the collection of tanks that I had at the time. I finished up my order tokens. These were the 3D printed ones. They actually take quite a bit of time to paint because I did the candy red on one side with the Thousand Suns icon. So it was, the gold undercoats, then the red, and then the white for the Thousand Suns icon. And then on the back side of that, it was doing a gold undercoat, but then the orders themselves like color coordinated, so they at a quick visual glance, and this was something that Jody and I had actually been talking about based upon the older versions of Epic and Space Marine, that there's kind of this color coordination of the orders, and figuring that out was a lot of fun, and they turned out great, and super happy with them, and they're very functional, and it's very clear at a quick glance what that unit's doing on the table. So very happy with that. I did pick up 4 Spartan assault tanks for Legions Imperialis, which just released last week, and actually just finished them this morning.
One of my favorite Horus Heresy models.
It's such a great looking tank. I just love the proportions of it, the shape with that, the true kind of assault ramp in the front there, but still it has more the Land Raider Proteus type treads that go all the way around it. Like, really like the aesthetics of that tank. Very excited to have them. This was the last thing I wanted to add for my Adepticon list for Legions Imperialis. So got them dialed in this morning, ready to go. I can't wait to take them for a test drive.
Because they're tanks.
Because they drive. That was the pun.
I've heard it's funnier if you explain jokes.
Yeah, after the fact.
That works well.
Then I did a big push on terrain.
Yeah.
Legions Imperialis terrain makes a huge difference in how the game plays. And we've had a bunch of buildings in games. Jody has some forests. But I wanted to kind of fill in some of the other things. So I did a couple things. One is I actually got a bunch of small model train scale trees. So I made a bunch of forest bases. So now I have like, I think 6 or 8 forest bases that I added to that just for more variety in gameplay. But then I also 3D printed a bunch of ruins and smaller buildings that had like partially destroyed buildings just to add kind of more of that small scale, because I have a bunch of large buildings for Titanicus specifically. So I wanted to bring a similar kind of plethora of options to Legions Imperialis, but at a smaller scale, because you don't need buildings that are that big for just the way the game plays.
Right.
So got those all printed, painted, ready to go. I need to do the flock on the tree bases for the grass on that, but that's not showing up for a couple days. So later this week, I'll hopefully have those finished up. And that was a good push for the terrain. Sharkadons, your proliferation in 40K hobbying has inspired me to wrapping up my Legions Imperialis project for this phase. So want to get that army finished, because it's only like 15 models away from having my 2,000 point army fully painted, ready to go. So I got all the base coats, all the grays done, and all the shades of grays done on 2 dreadnoughts, the storm speeder, and the impulsor. So it'll be kind of 4 large models that'll be wrapped up, and then I think I just have bikes and assault troops after that. So should be able to make a lot of good progress here pretty quickly on the rest of that. I was inspired by that game that we played with Bryce. He brought over the magnetized tray.
Yes.
So I was inspired by that for Legions Imperialis, because the models are so small that I was trying to figure out the best way to transport that. And the specific company for what he was using, for those who haven't seen it, it's basically a large scale kind of pencil case that has a magnetic sheet on the bottom, and then it has sticky magnets you just put on the bottom side of the bases. It's a great solution. It's a little bit too large for what Legions Imperialis needs, and because it's a UK based company, they wanted a ton of money to ship it over here.
Yeah.
So I got a little crafty with it and ordered some literal pencil cases, and then got some sheet magnets, and then designed some acrylic to have cut there. So now I have multi-leveled stacking acrylic sheets that will just pop out and magnetize into these pencil cases. So now I have a double-decker kind of transport solution.
Do you have pictures of that?
I have some.
Okay.
We'll put them up in the video for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, they looked really sharp.
That's interesting.
I had base envy or case envy,
and all in. So I designed in Illustrator the outline of the acrylic that I needed, and just took it to a guy down in Santa Cruz that just laser cuts the plastic.
Oh, that's cool.
So I had the plastic sheet, like the cases themselves were $10. The plastic was $10, and then the magnets were like $5. So I'm in like $25. I have this amazing, like perfect kind of custom case solution.
Interesting.
That cut down on the amount of space that I need by probably half for that. So very excited, very happy with how that turned out. And it was a fun project to just do something nerd adjacent that was very different.
A tableware case would work, but like
that's a lot of empty space.
That's a lot of
in
trays
there.
you could stick in there too, but it's like those trays aren't cheap either.
But the other thing is I needed something that I can fly with, and these will keep the magnets in place, because my bases are all magnetized now. So the magnets magnetized to the magnetic backing, and they actually just stack vertically in my backpack. So I can just wear that, and they're not going anywhere. But if I need to tip my backpack horizontally to like put under a plane seat, they're all magnetized there, so they're not going anywhere. So very happy with how the solution has worked out. And then last but not least, I did pick up the Great Slaughter, which is the latest expansion for Legions Imperialis. The thing that really excited me about this is the campaign system that Legions Imperialis.
The thing that really excited him about it was the words Legion Imperialis on the cover.
If you can't tell, I'm very happy with how this game's playing. I'm super excited for it. But the campaign stuff specifically looks really fun. There's some super thematic stuff of what it does, in that you can, it's set up for kind of one or two ways. The way that seems more appealing for me is to do a map campaign, but then each of the territories that you're fighting on the map have specific kind of bonuses for having control of them, or you get extra requisition points if you control things. The best example I can come off with the top of my head here is if you control the forge manufacturer, then you get an extra 10% worth of Titans you can field in there. Gotcha. So like having control of this area actually gives you in-game bonus how you construct your list. And then they're worth different campaign points for the overall campaign. So I think it's going to be a really fun system to play a campaign over with a small group, probably like 4 to 6 people. It's probably the sweet spot for that. But yeah, very excited and very cool. Been very prolific with hobby as well. I'm just painting very small stuff comparatively.
But I think we're all kind of jamming in the hobby area right now.
Yeah.
Myself. So last episode, I had to finish up like 7 Chaos Space Marines to kind of make sure the list worked out, my 2,000 point list. So I completed those 7 Chaos Space Marines. So I now have a 2,000 point Black Legion list I could play. Then I painted up a Black Legion Demon Prince so that I could remove Abaddon from the list, supplant a Demon Prince and like a Chaos Sorcerer in Terminator armor, which I already have painted. So now I have, I'm one of those guys, like I don't feel like Abaddon should be at every battle, right? In fact, I'm usually kind of reluctant to put him or like Magnus out there, even though every tournament you go to, Magnus is going to be on the table for 1,000 Suns list. So then once I completed that, I started working on kind of part 2, which is my Demon Engine inspired list, where I have multiple Forge Fiends, Mauler Fiends. I put a bunch of stuff in. The rest of the core of the list is really, there's like 2 squads of Chaos Space Marines, but then I have a Warp Smith that I painted up. So I painted him up.
Nice.
He's weird. Like his base is oval. He's kind of weird. He's super easy to paint up. Okay. He wasn't particularly hard or took a particularly long time. It is a lot of trim on all these models.
Yeah.
So the Demon Engines are going I started painting up the Archlord Discordant. He's, I'd say 60, 70% done at this point. I still have a lot of little detail work to do on him, but he's coming right along.
It was really funny in the hobby hangout of like, oh, there's a spot I missed the gold trim on.
Every time you think you completed it, and then you look and you go, oh, at this angle.
It's got so many legs and so many different things going in different directions.
And I'm not painting them in sub-assemblies either. So it's like, this is, it's really a model that you should have painted in sub-assemblies, but it's together. It is what it is.
This is the direction I want to go with my Iron Warriors eventually. I want a Demon Engine list because,
dude, I don't know if it's going to be any good, but it's going to be fun.
It will be eventually,
right? And yes, these things all come around.
There it is.
It'll be a lot of wounds racing at you and a lot of toughness and whatnot. So I assembled 2 Mauler Fiends and 1 Forge Fiend, which now rounds that out. So I have 2 and 2 in the list.
Nice.
I assembled 4 Obliterators. 2 of those are for Shell's list. So, I have 4 Obliterators in this list. 2 squads of 2.
So good.
Obliterators are so good. They're so good.
Love the new models on those too.
And it was funny because, Bryce was like, oh, I have a couple of these. I'm like, well, I could trade you these Tyranids for them if you, I'm interested in this. Okay, so we'll do a swap. And then I go and I start shuffling through my stuff and I'm like, here's 4 Obliterators right here. 4 brand new Obliterators still on sprue. Cool. I'll still take them so that they could go max 3 squads. I'll still take them from you, but I really don't need them. And I'm not buying them. I'm trading for them. So I feel like I'm not likely to bust out
trading
anytime soon. I know.
So that's the right.
And we'll talk about that later in this show too, in terms of group dynamics. So, so assembled 4 Obliterators, assembled 4 2 Mauler Fiends, 1 Forge Fiend. I was working here and there kind of as a palette cleanser to do different trim on Shell's Night Lords as opposed to my Black Legion. But it was mostly I was experimenting with doing the lightning effect that Caleb had taught us on Shell's Night Lords. So I did a little bit of that. And then Caleb and I started talking about, Caleb's like, well, if you do this, I'll do this on them. I'm like, okay, here we go.
So in terms of, I want to pivot there because I didn't, the palette cleanser of doing the lightning. Were you just practicing the lightning effect?
Yeah.
So a lot of the top end painters that years ago when I was interested in that sort of thing was communicating with those folks regularly. They have a bucket of like partially painted models. And as a palette cleanser, they'll just be like, I want to work on a non-white skin tone.
Yeah.
Or I want to work on OSL or a faceted gem. And that's literally all they paint on the model. And then they go, okay.
And then they put it away.
And it's done. And they may come back to it someday, or they might not. And that's another one of those like weird permission places of like, you have that bucket of Chaos Marines that are old Chaos Marines that look doughy by modern standards.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yeah. That I was just thinking of the head I used on anyway, but like using those pieces to be like, I'm going to practice different gold effects, or I'm going to practice. Okay.
But I kind of had it down. This was more about just brush control, airbrush control. And like, I kind of had it down and I was like, I'll make a few mistakes here or there, but I can cover that up, and I'm making progress on her army a little bit.
That sounds like a lot of win.
Yeah. So it was kind of win all around. So, okay. Worked on that a little bit. Then we did hobby night, and somebody also brought this up in the Facebook group, which was many years ago. We did a thing we called the Hobby Progress Challenge, and we called it the War on Gray Plastic. And so he said, I would really wish you would do that again. And I kind of thought about that a lot. And Josh and I talked about that a lot. And we came to the conclusion, we should do that again. And so then I started looking at and talking to Loopy because Loopy tracked a lot of it for us.
Yeah.
I went to Jeff. I said, hey, remember we did this? And he goes, yeah. And I go, do you remember how we did this? He goes, I remember we did a Hobby Progress Challenge.
We did 2 before.
I think we did 2. We did 1, and then Loopy ran the next one.
Okay, yeah. But this is back in the forum days. Pre-Facebook or Discord.
I mean, and then I asked Jeff, I go, oh, okay. I go, you don't remember this? He goes, I remember I used to be on a podcast. Like Jeff was no help.
Yeah.
Loopy kind of remembered. And what it was, and this is where I think I'm landing on this, Josh, and you and I haven't really talked about this yet, but
doing it live.
Over the course of 12 months, it'll be you paint a unit a month. You get to pick what that unit is. It's fine. Let's say you're halfway, and the idea would be at the end of the thing, you have an army to play. But let's say you're halfway through already painting an army, and you're like, well, but I'm already halfway through painting something. Cool. Paint a unit or more per month. Finish your army, and then paint other stuff. I want to do a Blitzbowl team, or I want to do a Warcry warband, or a Necromunda gang, or whatever. You would get credit for these. We would track. You put up a post that says here's the start of it with it just primed or whatever, and then you put up a post here. Here it is now complete with the dates and whatever. We check who completes it, and then people who complete the most or have fully completed it, we enter into drawings for prizes and whatnot that hopefully some of our sponsors will help us provide. And and then there's kind of a best of the rest, right? Like the people who complete it get in this, and then everybody kind of gets a chance at a little something, but it's really about
making that progress.
It's more about making the progress and helping you drive you forward to complete progress. And so one of the things we were talking about was, well, if we do this, what would I paint? And I go, I think I'd get my Sisters of Battle engaged with this. So of course, as another palette cleanser from doing more trim, I kind of pivoted and I said, okay, well, let me actually create a Sisters of Battle list, much like I did with the Black Legion, and then see what that looks like, and then see how I would paint towards that. Now, when Sisters came out, I had talked for years about if they came out in plastic, I was going to buy into them. Boy, did I buy into them. Like I overbought on Sisters of Battle big time. So I have 2 banker boxes just full of Sisters of Battle boxes, some still in shrink wrap. So I made a list. I think it's a pretty diverse list. I don't know that it would be good competitively, so to speak, but it has kind of a little bit of cool things in it that I like. And I think some things are obviously very strong and other things are not necessarily the most strong. But
looks fun.
But it's 2,000 points and it looks fun and it has a lot of variety to it. And so then I started saying, okay, what had I assembled? What do I need to assemble? And I started assembling. And so here's what I assembled. I assembled a Retributor Superior to round out a Retributor squad I had. I assembled 3 Paragon war suits. Those take me about 90 minutes a piece to assemble. Those things are very tiny parts.
A lot of parts.
And a lot of tiny parts. Yeah. And they're beautiful models. But boy, they're some work. Like, I was huffing some glue putting these things together. Assembled 4 Celestian Sacrosaints. Assembled 2 Seraphim with dual hand flamers. I need 2 more of those. I assembled a Sister Superior for one of my Battle Sister squads so that she's properly outfitted. I purchased a Retributor squad so I could get those 2 hand flamers. I need to get 2 more, so I'll probably end up buying another. But somebody also made point of, well, you could also then put the hand melta guns on 2 others for each of those squads, so you could swap them out. I said, oh, that's a good point. So I'm not like wasting a bunch of models. Just like sometimes you'll buy a kit and you're like, I just need these
just for
2
weapons.
Yeah. Well, now I'll at least use 4 of the 6 models in that, or 4 of the.
I'm pretty sure in my Necromunda stash, I've got a bunch of just hand flamers. Well, I don't know if they'll match, but
I'll figure something.
Yeah.
Boy, I felt like I assembled more than that. You know what? I think it was those war suits that really drove me.
It took some time.
But I've got like Morven Vol in the list. I've got Celestine in the list. All this stuff I had already pre-assembled. Yeah, I have 2 rhinos. I have 2 immolators, one with flamers, one with multi-meltas. I've got the weapons can actually be switched out. I have them so they're switchable.
Yep.
I've got to build 2 of the
got Exorcists.
The Exorcists. Yeah. I have to build the 2 I'm down to literally 2 Exorcists and like 6 of the what do you call it? The penitent gals? The
penitent engines?
Not the engines, the
Repentia.
Repentia. Sisters Repentia. So yeah, I mean I've got I think a pretty big list, but it's like 20 units. So I'm like, oh my goodness.
Army ants, man. That's what I used to call them.
And it's a lot of
good to have some cheap bodies.
But I'm kind of excited about the project.
Yeah.
And so I'll tackle that when the Hobby Progress Challenge begins.
Nice. That was the army I did for the second one. Was my sister's army. Yep.
Okay.
Fun trivia. The first Hobby Progress Challenge was really before I knew you guys. I won the raffle for the big prize.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I won one of the KR footlockers.
Oh, your
that was I lived in Sacramento then. Yeah. I don't think I met you guys at all.
What year that was?
Second one was 2015, I believe.
So that would have been
First one.
I think the first one was 2015.
The first one?
It was either 2014 or 15. Yeah. Like here's my point. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was over 10 years ago.
That's what I started my Necrons. Yeah. My 5th edition Necrons, which is now the current Necron army.
Yeah, my Tzeentch demons that turned into 4 separate armies.
And Shell wants to help track that. So Shell and Loopy both offered their services for helping track that.
Awesome.
So we'll figure out how we're going to do it. We were kind of looking at how threads work in Discord. So we may make that a requirement. I don't know yet. But we're figuring it out, how you will track what you want to do. So what I would say is you've got some time because I'm looking at probably May that we would kick this off. I think you brought up the point, Josh, of, boy, it'd be really cool if we finished it right at Adepticon so that everybody came to Adepticon. I don't think, had we thought about this 2 months ago, that would have been perfect.
Well, yeah, we missed the new year. We missed the new edition for like a launch of this one. So we'll just
pivot.
We'll just make it. And then, to what you were saying, like if you're in the middle of an army right now, finish that army out for the first half of this and then jump on whatever else is next.
The idea is just to get this stuff painted that you got sitting there. So we'll announce more details about that when I return from Australia, which I leave in 2 days for. So, and I'll be gone for 3 weeks. So anyway, we'll chat while I'm there, like remotely, but we'll figure out all the details and
sounds great.
Start making stuff up for that. So that was me. Like it was a lot of assembly, a bit of painting. I got some models done, and I don't remember who. I think it was Dave Taylor. I was telling you, there's nothing more satisfying than finish painting a model, and then you go put it on the shelf with all your other painted models, just like that. I think the only thing more satisfying is then putting it on the table and watching it get destroyed the first round because you just freshly painted it.
Your beautifully painted first model.
Parade orders, man. That's what it is. You put them on parade orders.
That's right.
That's right.
I love that. That is
it is
the
a good
victory
feeling,
lap.
but it's a good
parade
feeling,
order.
right?
Oh,
and then you kind of like, you kind of like step back and you look at it and you're like, yeah, look at all that stuff I painted.
Yeah.
You know? And for me, it's been a while. This is the 5th army I've painted to completion. So for me, it's like, I hadn't had that feeling in a while. Most of the armies I'd had since then had been commissioned.
Yeah. Now, since you cracked this can of worms, Josh and I were talking about this in the weigh-in. How long has it been
Since I fully painted an army?
you painted an army?
Oh boy, that's a good question. What was
It's
the last?
been a minute.
Is it World Eaters? Probably.
I did.
Plague was
Ultramarines?
after. As Ultramarines was
No,
last.
Plague was before World Eaters.
Yeah.
My Plague Marines. Okay, so my first army I completed was my Tyranids.
Okay.
Then I painted the Plague Marines, and they had, at the time we called it the Forge World bump because nobody had Forge World stuff. I won a painting contest on that. Then I decided, I want to do World Eaters because I could get all the World Eaters Forge World pieces as well. So I did World Eaters. Then I did Ultramarines. What am I missing? Oh, now I've done Black Legion. Black Legion, my 5th. So literally my last army I fully painted was Ultramarines, and that was a long time ago.
At least pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well before that, I sold them to AJ well before the pandemic, before he left here. So yeah, it's been, I would say 6 years since I fully, that's not to say I hadn't painted units.
No.
I painted,
you've still been hobbying.
I painted a bunch of units for Shell's Eldar army.
Yeah, that's true.
But the majority of that was commissioned through Dave Paints. And then he gave me the recipes and I said, okay. And then I basically copied a bunch of stuff and painted models for that. I've painted a few kill teams here or there, but then I've done Necromunda stuff, and
that's not the same as putting an army on parade order.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. So it's been a while, and it's a great feeling to have back.
I'm stoked for you, man. I am thrilled out of my gourd to see a hobby in again. I mean, that's what I've talked about that a ton of. Like, it's been a long time since I put it. I just got to have that with finishing that little combat patrol.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I wasn't hobbying. I paint all the freaking time.
Yeah.
Just wasn't painting 40K.
So anyway,
but that's another actuality. That's another, like, to go back to the dopamine hit thing. Now you have the dopamine hit of the excitement about putting that painted army on the table.
Yeah, yes.
And that maybe that's why that feels so good.
Yeah. And again, I don't know what it was about that moment of Josh saying, hey, just play this. And then I put him on the table and was like, I got to get the rest of this done. And it was like, boom.
Let's go.
Yeah, it went nuts after that.
Yeah.
The deeply incestuous, in a good way, relationship of build, paint, play.
Is there good incest?
With build, paint, play there is. When it's hobby.
When it comes to hobby.
When it's with GW plastic on plastic, it's great.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh my goodness. All right.
Well, it's awesome that you have your 2K core, and now you can.
I can even adjust a little bit of that.
Yeah, jumping in with extra options and like wildly different play styles of how you can mix that up too.
Yeah,
so,
for
like,
sure.
I think
that's actually one thing I've always appreciated about the Chaos armies in general is that there's a lot of different ways you can play those armies. A lot of different ways. Even in 5th edition, that was like a much maligned codex.
Yeah.
And I think it was only so maligned because it came on the heels of the 3.5 where you could like do all kinds of crazy stuff. But the codex, I mean, even what you have now, like there's just a lot of different ways you can play those armies.
Yeah. You're basically, Chaos Legionnaire can shoot or assault pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway,
sisters will play very differently from them too.
Oh my God.
That'll be a really nice.
My biggest fear is I paint them all up and then I play them. I'm like, I do not like this army. Sell it and do something else. Anyway, let's leap into games played.
Sounds great.
Let's leap into games played, and we'll go ahead and start. I'll start. So I did play a 1,000-point learning game with Shell. She played the Shell Dart. I played my Black Legion.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She prompted it. She was like, now sounds like a good time for me to.
The previous hobby hangout, not the one we just did, but the one before, I'd asked why she hadn't jumped in yet, just because it's such a great place to play with combat patrols and 10th edition being so friendly to a new player. Yeah. So I was genuinely just curious. So I asked her as part of our hangout. So I was super excited to see that it happened.
She wanted to do it. So she was like, help me make a list. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with Eldar. So, and then even Sky was like, well, stick a Spirit Seer with the Wraith Guard.
Turns out it's real.
Yeah. So anyway, what takes those out though is Obliterators. So anyway, we put together a list and, I started walking her through the rules. Now, Shell's not the best in rules retention for this kind of thing in particular. And she'll tell you, like, I'm not, like, I think she even said those things don't stick in her head. So I have to kind of help walk her through some of it. But then I'd be like, okay, this weapon is strength 5, your toughness 4. So what do I wound on? Right. And she'd be like, 3s. And I'm like, yeah, 3s. Exactly. You know, I mean, like, we would kind of go that whole route. Yeah. But I think she had a lot of fun. There did come a point where, like, I started pulling punches because not understanding how her list really worked and, like, what we put together. I was just like, well, these obliterators are going to shoot at that. And then I'm like, oh, I wiped out almost all of them. I'm like, maybe I don't shoot those again with this other unit that would, because I want her to at least experience using that unit. And then it brought a model back, and I'm like, okay, so now you've got an extra model. You see how that works, blah, blah, blah. So it was not about winning or losing the game. It was funny. Somebody said, oh, I noticed he didn't post if he won or lost. I mean, it didn't matter. It was really about, here's how the game works.
Yeah. It's not usually something we talk about on the show anyway. No. It's not important.
Yeah. And I mean, there came a point where she's like, well, what can I do to fight these Terminators? And I'm like, at this point, you're kind of out of things that can really hurt those Terminators. So, like, and then, you know, we walk through, well, how do you work around that now? Like, what are your options? Remember, the objective is not killing the Terminators. The objective is getting on the objectives. Right. So what do you do? You've got these guys that are super fast, you know, so get them over where they need to be. So, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So we played that. That was great.
That's awesome.
It was awesome.
She wants to play more. Then you and I, Josh, played an Adeptus Titanicus game with Sky.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Sky and Craig. Craig got sick.
Yeah, this was in anticipation of their doubles that they're playing at Adepticon, and they're both fairly new to the game. So they've both been like putting a lot of time and effort into painting their Titans.
Craig's stuff.
Incredible.
So
yeah.
Flipping good.
Yeah. Really nicely done.
He did this effect where he painted, like, his Titan is either quartered or halved in the paint scheme, but like one half of it is a blue, but clearly he painted like a metallic, and then he airbrushed like a filter, whether it's a speed paint or whatever, over the metallic. It looks so good.
And then matted it down. Yeah.
That blue is so sick looking.
It's that matte metallic blue.
Oh, yeah. It almost looks like kind of satin. Like it looked super good.
Yeah. I've only seen the pictures. I can't wait to see them.
Oh my God. They're great. Yeah. They're great.
They're gorgeous.
So because he couldn't make it, Sky
ended up playing both halves of that, so he could still see how their combined list kind of paired off against.
They challenged the winners of the Adeptus Titanicus.
That's right.
at
we had medals in tow, and
those pictures were so good.
Yeah. Ask us how the game went.
How'd the game go?
I did great.
Oh, did you?
I did pretty. Well, I mean, our dice were terrible. Our dice were absolutely terrible.
It is so bad.
Sky's dice were incredibly hot. He could not fail shield saves, and he kept pushing his reactors and getting them for free. So he was just.
And every time we'd push, it's like 1, 2, 1, 2. It's like
He didn't roll any 2s. He just rolled like 3 pluses and 1s. So he just kept his shields up the entire game.
We got destroyed. We got absolutely
just
destroyed.
Straight blood bowled you, huh? This game's easy. Just roll 6s.
Yeah, he rolled very well.
I made one huge tactical error, and it was so funny. Like I moved a Warhound up behind this building, and I turned it thinking I was going to go around and shoot this other thing. And Josh is like, "You sure you want to face that way and not the other way?" I'm like, "Well, I think I'm going to go shoot over this." And then like the next move, it became like absolutely apparent I should have been facing the other direction. I'm like, Josh saw this coming, and I did not. I'm like, I'm so stupid.
I wasn't going to tell you how to play it, but I saw that
coming. Stupid. You know what? That's how you learn, though. It's a learning lesson for me.
That's just my experience. I'm probably 85 games of Titanicus in at this point. So.
You know what my lesson was? Listen to what Josh says.
Tactically?
I also took a pretty skewed list because I wanted them. I brought a War Master, which is just the biggest model the game has.
Our list was...
which...
it was what it was.
I think it could have been a fun game had the dice been average on both sides. Like I would say our shield saves were pretty average, but our hit rolls were just terrible. Yeah. So then that compounds with. He doesn't have to make a lot of shield saves, and he's making all the ones that he does have to make. Really kind of skewed the game that way. That being said, like
stuff got destroyed.
That War Master did a lot of work. He killed at least 3 Titans. He did his job, and
my little Warhound
at the end
was overheating, so ran right up to him.
Little suicide bomber, which did its thing.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you would think that would damage his Titans. As it turns out,
you didn't roll very well.
Not very well.
The
damaged mine.
Yeah. Running into things tends to.
It was a lot of stuff was blowing up.
We were playing with the destructible terrain rules, which is really fun addition. It's a fun additional layer to that game where you're actually removing terrain and replacing it with difficult terrain and things like that. It was a super fun game, even though the dice were
so fun,
very lopsided.
There were at least 3 major detonations of Titans.
Yeah,
at least 3.
I love that. That's how AT games are tracked.
Yeah. And then one magazine cooked off. Things
blew up big.
One Titan just died and just stayed there until he got hit.
And he fell over.
And then another one like spun around and fell over, and like it was a great game. It was a great game. But man, Warhounds overheat real fast.
Yes.
Like you got to be real careful on their heat.
My highlight was the War Master on a split fire order was able to take out a Reaver and a Warlord in 1 round of shooting.
It was pretty cool.
It took some work to get there, but
there was this one part where Josh is shooting the Warlord, right?
Yeah.
Warlord, that's what you're playing.
No, I had the War Master.
Excuse me, War Master. Josh is shooting the War Master. He like shoots at all this stuff, and then he's like, okay, now I'm going to shoot at that. And this guy goes, with what? And he goes, well, he's got these guns here too. And like he just has so many guns.
He's got 5 guns.
What about his knees?
It's pretty much. Yeah. It's pretty much.
You have to be really close for the knees to shoot.
Yeah. Then it's knees and elbows.
They're only like 6-inch range. Yeah.
I know. That was a joke. He's got guns in his knees.
It was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, I think Sky and Craig will do great at the event. They've got a pretty cool list.
They've been getting a lot of games in, so they'll pick it up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Especially in quick succession.
And their stuff's going to look great. Yeah. So Sky's got to hurry up, finish painting it. Hurry up, Sky. You're down to a week.
Get those carapaces done.
You should keep going with your game so we can talk more about dice.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. So in addition to that Titanicus game, I also played a Legions Imperialis 2,000 point game against Ivan. We actually met up at Game Castle Santa Clara.
Oh, nice.
Because he lives super close to it. He usually comes over my way to the Santa Cruz Mountains. So I met him over there, and I don't think I'd been in that store in about 5 years. And they've actually expanded the whole play area. And was like, oh, wow, crazy different.
Is it? I mean, it's still the same. It
was like twice as much play space in that back shipping area, though.
I guess it is because they have like they used to have a wall back
where
there.
the flea market has been. There's been that
it goes
wall.
around that corner.
Now it goes around that whole corner.
That's true.
So there was a lot
that
more
used to be
tables
warehouse space.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
So it'd been a while since I've been there. Interesting thing. It was a super fun game. We were really double checking all the rules that we had questions with. So we didn't get that far in the game, but the kind of just the back and forth of the game was so satisfying, so rewarding. We weren't able to play the full game, partially because we were just really, this was just again, in anticipation of Adepticon and really getting our rules checks dialed in. But also, I don't think anybody had played Legions Imperialis at Game Castle Santa Clara before. So we had a lot of people coming by to check it out
and seeing fully painted stuff.
Yeah, it's such a presence on the board and how like dudes are in buildings and things are dying left and right. And we had somebody come over, and this was like after the first round of combat. And he's like, "Oh wow, I'm surprised like so much stuff is on the board." And like because we were just the first turn of the game takes way longer, and then it gets a lot faster quickly thereafter because you still have everything alive, and then everything dies. So the game speed up very quickly. Anyways, it was super fun game, gorgeous, and it was cool to see the community interacting with a game that they had like been curious to see but hadn't seen in person yet. So it was
that's so rewarding to get to showcase a game like that.
And not only that, they're seeing like a top tier level looking experience of it. Yeah. Right. That's interesting.
Ivan's terrain is incredible.
I mean, I'm not just saying that to it sounds kind of conceited. It's not my army. I'm talking about yours. It really is. You guys have done amazing work on this.
Thanks. I'm very, very pleased with how it's coming together.
Yeah.
And then I did another old world game. This was just a 1,250 point game of the old world with Travis. Again, we're both just kind of learning the rules, learning our armies.
That's right.
So this was super fun. This was way smoother than the first game. Travis still had a miscast with his necromancer and blew up a couple dudes around him. So I ended up having a miscast with my vampire and didn't blow anything up. But
I got to tell you, watching you guys play that game reaffirmed for me that that game's not for me. Like, it's just there's not enough terrain on the table. It doesn't feel like 40K. Like, you're always playing within the terrain and moving stuff, especially when we do like city fight stuff here on the city fight boards I have and stuff. Yeah. And I just feel like it's just not for me. I mean, that's fine. Like, I love that people love it, and I'm glad it's back for the people that really wanted it back. And like the packaging alone, I was like, should I get into this? And I'm like, I'm really glad I have not. It's not gone. The
gameplay is very rewarding and satisfying because positioning and the rank and flank and rank and file and wheeling and all, like, it makes such a huge difference in how the game plays that by necessity it has to be lighter in terrain.
No, I get you.
You wouldn't get anything done otherwise.
And I feel like I couldn't care less about
that. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just not the game for me, which is
that's totally fine. Yeah.
But I see why people like it. Yeah. But to me, it's just like, it's not for me.
Yeah. So we'll get another game going in the next couple of weeks. But just been fun going with that. And
it was fun watching how much you and Travis were enjoying it. Though. Yeah. Like, that was fun for me to see, like, oh yeah, they are clearly, like, they're laughing and they think this is fun. So.
And there's just so much nostalgia for this one.
It's
really driving. The nostalgia is definitely driving this for me. But what they have done with the rules, very happy with also.
Travis is painting the hell out of his stuff.
He is. Yeah.
Repainting, upgrading,
repainting, upgrading.
Yeah.
I was like, when you switch to the world of physical old world, let me know. I'd love to take it for a spin. I still have two massive armies.
I've got all the models, but it'll take me a while to paint. So yeah.
I will not be painting for that. I think my literally 300-400 night goblins are probably enough to get started with.
Probably good.
Probably okay.
I had that army. Yeah. I was like, back in high school when I had time to kill, it was like horde armies were the thing. I'm like, never again. I don't have that time anymore. Lastly, I'll bring it home. Jody and I got together again in anticipation of Adepticon and just fun to play a game with our good friend, Legions Imperialis, another 2,000. Actually, this was 1,600 point game because Jody was just a little shy of the
had not yet purchased the Bane Blades.
Bane Blades had not been added to the cart. So we played a game over at your house, had a great time, full rules similar. Like, we looked up every rule that we had a question about. Had a full, it was a 4x4 board. It's just slightly smaller than the 4x5 for a full size game. Brought all my terrain there. So it's a great looking game. Your stuff looks great. I'm very happy with how mine's coming together. It's super, super fun. Just very, very tight tactical game. I would say my dice were pretty average on that. I think you had a little.
I was rolling lights out. But I rolled unbelievably well. And usually when people say that, it's like, I rolled so well and the game just went my way. The only reason our game was vaguely competitive is because I rolled lights out. That was it. I rolled amazing, and it still was a total butt whooping from Josh given to me. So I was thankful that my dice was like, we're going to let you have fun today, dude.
Yeah, it was a super fun game.
It was fun. And it was fun getting, like, it's weird watching a game going, I should be so dead right now. This is awesome. My Sentinels won't die. They should have been dead like 2 turns ago.
Yeah. That was me in the Adeptus Titanicus event we went up to. Like, I had a Warhound.
Would not die.
Would make every shield save. Like, he just ran around. Woo-hoo-hoo. It was so frustrating for my poor opponent.
Lupus invulnerabilis.
That's right.
I've in most of my games of Legions Imperialis, I've had like one base of tactical Marines that just like refuses to die at the end.
Awesome.
So I'm just like, kind shields. And it has nothing to do with, I just happen to get lucky on the dice rolls for one very particular base of models.
Well, listen, I'm hoping, like I said, I'm going down to Australia. And I always make these jokes about Australian 6s, R1s. Right. Like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Do you have some games lined up while you're down there?
No, I'm not taking anything like that.
They got toys there.
They have. You know what? I do know the people that run events down there, and I'm going to meet with them. I mean, I'm sure I could play a game if I wanted to. I do not think I will do that.
No, it was a great game. It was fun to see knights on the table. I don't know that we'd seen knights go out and stomp around.
That's cool.
That was fun. Yeah, they actually preferred not having played a Titan, but played in a game with Titans. I preferred seeing the knights in the game scale and kind of functionality. Unsurprisingly, they felt more in alignment with the other armor and stuff, whereas the Titans feel very separate and very different. And like, this is a different thing, which they should.
They have a couple pages of rules separating Titans specifically, which Knights don't. So Knights just play like everything else, and Knight size and Knight options.
Run up and kick tanks.
And I think it's
get shot by dreadnoughts.
I think it's the happy place for Knights because, like in Titanicus, again, you're feeling
kind of limited in
Knights.
Titanicus.
Questoris Knights, especially, are kind of limited in Titanicus.
For sure.
Where in Legions Imperialis, they felt great.
Like and the 3 different loadouts, because I just built them per stock kit of like one of each, felt like they functioned very differently. It was super enjoyable, not just because Josh is always fun to play with, and also because Josh is really fun to play with. That's what I meant. Also got to like immediately think about how I wanted to change my list. Some really great observations Josh kind of pointed out of, well, you could split this into 2 separate formations and have more drops and more activations, and that back and forth activation thing that happens with alternating activation games. You have to be aware of that. That's the nature of the game.
Very tactical game. So it's always fun to kind of look back upon it afterwards. And again, because after we're in the Legions Imperialis episode, we were talking about kind of the theaters of war on the battlefield of like this flank. It's less about the specific things, but some of those specifics make a difference. But it all ties together so tactically. It's a very rewarding gameplay experience.
Interesting.
I think the one thing that really came out of that game for me is Titanicus, or not Titanicus, excuse me, Legions Imperialis evolves in like 3 very distinct phases. There's like the opening salvo, and it's just armor blowing the snot out of each other. And then there's the like push to objectives where infantry is just like
racing to get on objectives
and is totally dominant in the middle, and points are getting scored. And then at the end of the game, it's like, what's still alive that can do something?
Right.
And in that game,
That's
it was
really cool.
It was funny. The dreadnoughts were like this slow come around the back end. And at the end, I was like, I literally can't do anything, but they were walking over the carcass of like Kratoses and knights and dead infantry and dead sentinels, and like what they would have been pushing up into was just this decimated. And comparatively, they were amazing. They'd been a non-issue the whole game, but at the end, it was like, oh my god, look at these dreadnoughts.
Thematically, that is really, really cool.
So it was fun that the game tells that kind of, even if it's predictable story, it's a story of engagement. The last, that was you.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to close out as almost a segue into the main topic. The other gaming I got done was I played a couple sessions of our alternating Friday night teachers Dolmenwood role-playing game group. That was a lot of words.
That is.
So for going on almost
abbreviation of that alternating
every 2 weeks, a group of teachers from my old school, I've moved schools and job descriptions. There's 6 of us. 7 with our GM. So 6 players and the game master have gotten together for about 3 years every 2 weeks on Friday nights after work. So we started about 4:00 when everybody can shut down their classrooms and get to where we need to be. So we gathered and played. We're playing in the Dolmenwood setting, which is a weird fairy tale grim setting.
Again, I'd just like to point out that he called you a nerd earlier.
I was thinking the same thing. That's funny. We're all nerds. Come on.
Vegas streaming. That's why it's funny. We're all nerds. And then also had...
Yeah, but I'm not that kind of nerd. No,
you're right. How's your Astronomicon?
Shut
up. And then we had our monthly gathering that someday Carl will join us to participate in. We've been playing Shadow Dark, which is a riff on... It takes old school original D&D dungeon survival vibes and updates the rules to modern RPG mechanics that are a lot easier to rock. But we've had about 20 people alternating through.
It's impressive.
Every month since this summer, one Sunday a month, we get together and we run, it's 2 separate table groups of up to 5 players at each table plus a GM. So up to 6 people at each table. And we had that group up and running. And again, that's been going every month since this summer when the game Shadow Dark came out.
That's very cool.
So yeah, I wanted to touch base on those. Yeah, Josh has been showing up.
I know, he keeps telling me about it. I'm like,
Jody threatened in a couple days.
Jody sent out the email and he's like, if you don't, come to this thing, we're gonna remove you from the list. So I'm like, please don't remove me from the email list. Like, I really want to come.
I just don't want to be spamming people. They're like, this is dumb. I don't like it.
I am totally in. I just can't.
Yeah, if Sundays are both wonderful and challenging in their own ways.
It's adults playing role-playing games. It's very hard to get everybody together.
Yep. But in terms of moving on to the main topic, it's two very different groups organized in two very different ways that allow us to get together and have a great time. So wanted to call those groups out. Also, it's just really cool, fun people. We have said of the Sunday group, you have to be interested in like role-playing games somewhat, or just curious, and you have to be a chill person.
Yeah.
And if you meet those two criteria, you're welcome. Come hang out. And so far we've found, like I said, about 20 people that are rotating through.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a good time.
That's a good pile of people too.
It reminds me of that, like one of my favorite memes is that the Council of Elrond, when they have like the Lord of the Rings guys, and they're like, we're gonna go on this quest on Sunday, and like Legolas is like, or Aragorn's like, you have my sword, and like you have my bow, and then Gimli's like, ooh, Sunday doesn't work for me.
Pretty much. So we tried to find a group that could work around scheduling, the true bane of any group.
But I think just like running a campaign for 40K or Necromunda or whatever it is, what you have to do, and this is what you've done, is say, here's the date it's happening.
Yep.
You're either there or you're not.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
You know?
And these two groups are totally different, right? Like one's a closed group. We actively, like the teacher group, we're like, we can't have any more people.
Right.
It's 6 players, which is a big group.
Yeah.
And it's all teachers, and we're all teachers that at one point all taught at the same school.
Right.
That wasn't a criteria. It's just worked out that way. So that group is very closed and small and tight, whereas the Sunday group is the more the merrier, as long as you are, again, interested in this sort of thing and are able to just be chill and enjoy it.
Very cool.
So cool. I just wanted to talk, like I said, call those out so we can.
You'll come back to that kind of those again in a bit as we move into our main topic, which we're going to do right after this break. All right, and we're back, and now we're getting to the main, topic here, which we've titled the show "Unity in the Grimdark," and this is really, as you're going to see, this is kind of an evolving discussion around game groups, like where they come from, what benefits there are to them, how they evolve, how they sometimes have problems.
What makes them tick? Yeah,
kind of what makes them tick. And I just thought it was kind of an interesting topic to discuss, as in particular, look, the core of this show is how do we make you a part of our gaming group? And our gaming group can tend to wax and wane.
Yeah.
And I would say we have been waning in the last year and a half, 2 years. I think like we're kind of starting to go back to the waxing part.
Yeah.
So wax on, wax off.
Wait for it. Thank you.
Yeah. 9th edition and COVID definitely.
It murdered our progress there. So it's actually probably a good thing we weren't doing the show around that time because I've been like, what'd you do? I don't know.
Everything sucks.
Organize my game room.
And then it would have turned into a board gaming podcast because we started
probably
playing a lot of board games.
Jeff wanted it to become years ago. He was like, we should do board games. I'm like, that's not what we're here to talk about.
For the next year, we're talking about Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
Oh, I could talk about that.
Horror on the Orient Express.
That's right. When I say murder, same difference.
We played Horror on the Orient Express all right. Let's get on topic.
Tangents?
So really the first thing I wanted to talk about with you guys is the formation and kind of evolution of gaming groups. And so like, how do Warhammer 40,000 gaming groups kind of come together? What attracts players to these groups, and how do they evolve over time? And so just to get the topic kind of started, I'll share kind of my story. I'd like to hear your guys' stories. And then for the people watching on YouTube, I'd love to see your comments, or if you're on our Facebook group, let us know a little bit about how your group or the people that you play with kind of evolved, because there's multiple ways things can happen here, and we'll talk about those too. But for my experience, and I've said this on the show before, I'd always looked at Warhammer 40,000 from the outside when I was in high school and stuff. I was like, they want how much for plastic skeletons? And they're plastic. Like for me, it was all about metal models at the time. But when I finally pulled the trigger on getting into Warhammer 40,000, the reason I chose that game in particular was I knew it was the most popular. So I knew I would be able to get a group somewhere at a game store or something that I would be able to play within that group. I remember Dave Noble and I split the Battle for McCrag set. I did not want the Tyranids. I decided I wanted the Space Marines. And we, I had told my friends in our game, this was before you guys were really part of my friends circle.
Yep.
I had kind of gathered everybody because we would play weekly Dungeons and Dragons. And what I noticed was, every Sunday we would play for like 6-7 hours. Well, people started falling away as they had other responsibilities and people were having kids and jobs and yada, yada. And life just becomes life. And so I wanted something I could play when people could not meet. And I thought, this is a great game. It's two players playing, or 4 if we need to. And so I told everybody, I'm thinking about getting into this. Do not necessarily follow me down this path. I don't know if I'll even like it. Because what would tend to happen in our group, I was kind of the organizer, leader of a lot of things. I was the DM of the game and blah, blah, blah. And so I didn't want to, one of our friends used to get into stuff, try to get everybody into stuff, and then he'd immediately drop it. Then everybody'd be like, what happened? I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to say, hey, if you're interested, cool, but don't get into it because of me, because if I could drop it next week and be like, this is not for me. But as it turned out in our group, everybody got into it and bought a bunch of stuff. And some people went super deep into it and some not as deep. And then I was into it for a while and then kind of fell out of it for a year and then really kind of kicked it back in. And I've been in it ever since until the pandemic for about a year. But our group kind of formed around, hey, this is something we can do when we don't have role playing to do. And then it kind of over a while kind of subsumed the role playing aspect of it. And so in that group, we had 5 or 6 of us at the time that were playing. This is before Jeff even moved to the area. And it was 4th edition of Warhammer 40,000. And I would say we got too serious about the rules too quickly. Like one person went to run a campaign. I don't think I certainly didn't have a very firm grasp of the rules at that point. Like literally 4th edition, we get to the end of the game and I'd be like, okay, now we got to calculate who won the battle. And I don't know if you remember, but it was like, okay, for every unit that's half strength or more, you get these many points. And I'd just be like, okay, we're at the end of the game. Cool. Tell me who won. Like I had no idea. And so we got in a little serious. We got too serious into it. And we were just playing amongst our group, and that caused a little friction for a while. And then I went to a convention. I decided I want to go play at an event. And I had brought my fully painted Tyranids. This is the first time I'd fully painted an army. And at that event, that was where I met like Zach and Andrew and Tasty Taste and those guys. They had come to the event from Oakland, and Adon. I don't think I met Adon at that event, but I met him later in Oakland. And they had come down to play in that event, and they came up and they saw my Tyranids and the basing on my Tyranids. And they were like, wow, these look really cool. Like, I love the basing you did. And I said, yeah, I got the idea from this and this, that, and the other thing. And they said, hey, well, we play up in Oakland and we're always looking for more players. And I said, you know what? I would love to come up there and play with you guys. And that was kind of the first time I broke out of that group and saw the way other people played the game.
Yep.
And it was like, oh, wait, we've been doing some things incorrectly. And they were very much up in Oakland. They were very focused on playing the game exactly as it's written. Like that was their whole like vibe. Whereas we were like trying to learn it from scratch on our own, which was really tough in 4th edition. And so that was how like my group evolved. And then Oakland, and then we met at the event, and you and I, Josh, played at KublaCon. We played at KublaCon.
We played at a Kubla.
It might have been at DundraCon. Anyway, we
played Dundra.
Yeah, I think it was.
Because I think you met Jody and Scott at a Kubla.
Yeah, I played Scott.
Yep,
that was it. I played Scott and his orcs, and Scott was very talkative about his orcs, and I really loved the way they looked, and we had a great discussion. And then I met you guys, and it just kind of spread from there. And then Jeff came to the group, Jeff had come to the group prior to that. We had started the podcast, but it just kind of expanded from there. And I'll talk about why that happened in a minute. But how did you guys, let's start with you, Jody, like for your gaming group, whether it be 40K or the group that you're currently playing, you just talked about two groups during the Hobby Progress thing.
Yeah, it's tough because to a degree, I'd say which one.
Right.
Like, and I've also had the luxury of,
and before you even go to that, like I'm picturing like a Venn diagram. Some of them overlap, right? And some don't.
Right. So like your origin story group, you had Killian on a while back of G3. That's that group, which is not the same. Talk about evolution. Like what he's doing now is
totally
not
different. Yeah.
Is awesome. And I support and like take a lot of pride in, was a part of the foundations of what he is doing now, not in like a building capacity, but just in like inspiration. Was one of the guys there before they became what it is now. Right.
So just for somebody who hasn't listened, we're talking about a group, the Gothamos Gaming Group, which is now up in
Northern California, Redding area.
Yeah. And focused primarily on Adeptus Titanicus.
Right.
And probably it sounds like Legion Imperialis. Maybe
Yep. Definitely some coming.
And before that was doing narrative 40K gathering events at a scale that was not being done back in 5th edition.
Correct. Beyond Apocalypse.
Yeah. Like they were playing Apocalypse style stuff before there were Apocalypse rules.
And then even beyond that, they were playing individual games all at the same time, feeding into a larger narrative and that they were tracking.
So that my original group became that. So my very beginning group was that growing up in Reading, there wasn't a regular hobby shop for a long time. Throughout the 90s or mid 80s, late 80s to mid 90s, there wasn't a hobby shop in town that carried Games Workshop or role-playing stuff. So when one opened up, naturally the folks who were around and interested in this sort of thing, other than a couple buddies that I sometimes played D&D with that lived in the neighborhood, I was the only one who had these weird toys. And we got together at a game store, and basically it coalesced at the game store, those of us who wanted to play the way it looked in the magazine. We assumed from an aesthetic standpoint that that's what it's supposed to look like. Anthony and I didn't know each other game, but went to school together and were a year apart, and knew each other and were friends and acquaintances from that, but then became close friends through playing at game stores.
Did you not realize each other played games separately, and then the store became kind of the focal point? And you're like, oh, hey, you're into this too?
Yeah, it was like, hey, dude, what are you doing here? And nerd had no idea. Like, you're a nerd. Turns out we were both big nerds. So then that was kind of the first group.
Interesting.
And it was really about that group gathered around the various stores that would open and close, because it was an opening and closing door of,
of stores that would fail. And
but we would always be there in terms of, and we would play away from the stores. And it was an aesthetic unity. It was everybody wanted to create what they saw in the magazines and build their own looking guys and their own stories and their own.
So correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm hearing, the store became the focal point of kind of initial meeting, but then you moved beyond the store, focusing on, hey, we're going to approach this aspect of, we're going to approach the hobby from this particular aspect, this direction.
Yeah. And there would be other gamers in the area that would like call us elitist and this and that. And I was like, no, we just want to play with painted stuff.
Still do.
Yeah, fair enough. So then I moved from there to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Sacramento, when I lived there and was playing out of Great Escape Games, had a thriving 5th edition tournament scene.
And tons of comp.
Yeah. And had some very competitive players that were the frontline guys kind of before they were frontline were playing there regularly. Excuse me. And so I was playing my orcs then, because I was building the orc army, because I hadn't seen anybody do a green tide that you read about in the narrative. That was my want, which happened to work really well in 5th edition.
Yeah, it did.
So I started playing a lot of tournament play and got to know that wider game group. And that's around the time Scott met you.
Yeah.
And never really clicked, though, with the tournament gamer group there.
Right.
So I ended up playing with some guys who just enjoyed board games and kind of goofing around more and kind of taking a more laid back approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So ended up in my own little group of kind of doing that thing. But it also found a different group in the Bay Area, which was the Inner Circle Painters. And that was a group that had some very high level competition painters in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And started really pushing my painting and hobby with them. And I would drive down to Endgame, funny enough, and meet up with them and have painting meetups,
Right.
and would sit and just sit for the afternoon and paint.
There were some talented painters at Endgame.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was a kid, he was like 16 and he was painting, like he'd win the junior competitions because he shouldn't have been competing in the junior. He was so good.
Yeah.
And like I saw like when he brought out a Marine Army at one point, I was just blown away. I was like, holy smokes.
And so that juice of aesthetic had carried me, carried me through. Then moved to Santa Cruz because Scott, who was part of the original group up in Redding, had moved down there, and he was really into narrative gaming.
Yeah.
So I jumped in on that and really enjoyed telling that story and getting to know folks in the area. And it as long as he and I were gaming together, it was all about the narrative and the story and what was going on. And that was that. And then through that timeline, I also met you and your group and have now been gaming with them.
Because I would host game days and
yeah. And then the pandemic happened, and also Edition I didn't care for happened, and pandemic happened and found role playing.
Yeah.
And then started finding out that there were weirdos in the copy room with me at my work, and went, hey, you want to roll some dice? And I met Matt, who like just draws people like a freaking halogen lamp, and
he's very charismatic.
Yeah, he can't help it, and he's a doer person, you know. And you talked about being the organizer, and I don't see myself as an organizer, which on some level I'm like, maybe that's not accurate because I've been in all these groups and then they seem to kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger while I'm in them. But I'm not the one I'm not the face, to use the A team thing. Like that's not how I approach these groups. So each group has had a different
You're
lens.
the wizard behind the curtain.
Sure, I'll take that. So each group has had a slightly different lens, a different focus, whether it was just an aesthetic one and then like learning the rules and learning the game together. If it was a competitive play focus, that was for a while, and really honing the craft of play. If it was just a narrative drive of like, we want to tell this story, or just camaraderie and enjoying a shared experience, which, I mean, the show is tremendously fun to be a part of, but that's how I think of this group. Like, these are just people that, like what I consider your expanded group, the Over the Hill group. Yeah. Which I say geographically, not age, unless it's Lars. But
I think I'm older than Lars.
Well, but it's funnier to say it to Lars for me.
It is.
Not in spirit.
Like for this group, for me, it's genuinely, it's just more social. Like I enjoy the company of this really cool group of people you've gathered around you.
It's like, hey, I think at one point,
this guy right to my right, I'm grabbing his knee for a reason.
I know, it's sexy.
It's a big knee.
But like Josh is organizing stuff. Like he does a great job of organizing, like, you know, we're going to do Necromunda campaign. He wants to, you know, I'm jumped on stupid Legions Imperialis because of him, right? It's cyclical. It all works. It all works.
Have you though?
Together. Well, it's just taking a backseat, man. I got a little too excited about what I was on.
No, you follow the hobby mojo.
Passion. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's been my very, like, it's a genuine evolution. Yeah. And then also, again, the ping ponging has been interesting of finding a group. It's something my wife and I have talked about a bunch of. When I move, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go find a group.
Yeah.
And I have socially, I have those skills of like, I can go find a group and then go, is this group meeting my needs?
Yeah. Josh.
Yeah,
yours is going to thread through kind of both.
Oh yeah, a bit, because you guys have both been in my life, my nerd life for a good while.
Now. Like
12 years
for me,
roughly.
I think.
Yeah. When did you move to Santa Cruz? About 12 years ago?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you had known each other a lot longer.
No, it's right about the same time. You know? Yeah. So, and I'll get there here in a minute.
Right? What that look on Carl's face was. It's a journey.
My early game life definitely started with just my brother and I. Like, so we would play Hero Quest together. He brought Titanicus home. He brought Epic home. Like, so we got into that, just the two of us. And then because we were lucky enough to have a family friend who worked in RPG publications, worked for Chaosium.
Right? Yeah. My favorite RPG group, by the way.
So Cthulhu, Elric, all Pendragon, all the good stuff. Immediately opened up doors to more people our age and similar interests.
Interesting.
Some of these people we ended up crossing over with to play both RPGs with as well as tabletop miniature games.
Okay.
Largely 40K at the time and then into fantasy a bit. Locally, there was no game store where I grew up until about maybe 94.
Okay.
And as soon as that shop opened up, there was immediately a community that kind of revolved around this game store. And this was a kind of hobby first, but just a really fun group. It was kind of the perfect first gamer group to open up to if you're just going to a random store. And really the only thing that we all had in common besides 40K was geographically we all lived in the same town.
Sure.
I got very lucky with the group of people that were
when you're younger and you can't travel that far a distance.
Absolutely.
That helps.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we had locally, we had a great group of players. Everybody was playing both 40K and fantasy for the most part. Most people would play both. High level of hobby, very friendly and welcoming for those friendly pickup games. Every couple of months or so, the store would actually, the owners of the store, it was a husband and wife who co-owned the store, would actually put on a narrative event. So this would be like two tables kind of tied together. And the thing that always comes back to mind is there was it was a big team battle. It was like 3-on-3 or 4-on-4, but then there was this Gene Stealer spawning pit in the middle. And if you went into the spawning pit, you would go to this other table.
I remember
and
you
then
talking about this.
You would deal with the circumstances of that or the repercussions of that. So it was, Imperial versus Chaos and then this Gene Stealer spawning pit thing in the middle. So some very like fond memories of games with those. And everybody was high level of hobby. So really nicely painted armies. Everybody was painted armies for the most part. Some people were varying degrees of that, but most people were at a pretty high standard for the paint. So that's always just been a kind of a hobby standard that I've had largely because that's how the group I started with just kind of naturally presented itself. But then we'd also do a lot of store tournaments. So we'd get not only these fun narrative events, but then we'd also have a weekend where it's like, whatever, you buy in $10 or something like that. And it's, you actually will play competitively with the same people. So it's always still good natured and friendly. But people were bringing it a bit more, and then whoever would win would get store credit or something with the prize pot. So I got introduced to a variety of people that way, and then also just a really kind of nice introduction to the hobby beyond my immediate group. And from that, ended up bringing friends into it through middle school and high school and things like that. Into the hobby, and then would end up playing more at home, but also would do some store events or store game nights and things like that. So expanding the group that way, just by bringing people kind of into the hobby. Then after high school, I moved to Santa Cruz, and at the time, Santa Cruz had no community. There was no games being played whatsoever. There was one store that had room for half a table downtown, and that was about it. So there were people playing mostly garage games, as we definitely met later in life. Lots of people playing garage games and people buying and painting stuff, but not a real scene there.
Right.
So I ended up actually connecting with the Santa Cruz Warhammer guys. So John and Mike that were running Santa Cruz Warhammer. I along with several other people had put inquiries and like, hey, you guys are doing this really cool hobby blog. Like you're sharing your stuff. You're obviously like, there is a scene in Santa Cruz called Santa Cruz Warhammer.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever like get together for a game day or something like that? And shortly thereafter, there was enough inquiries. I think they saw a recognition of, hey, let's like not just have this thing online where we're doing hobby. Let's actually bring the group together. So they started hosting some game days in one of the community centers downtown Santa Cruz. So the first one, I remember I showed up for the first one they ever did, and I brought my camera because I'm a photo nerd, and was mostly, I don't even think I played any games, but I was just like taking pictures and documenting it. And it was good to meet the greater community there. And then kind of build from there.
Yeah,
and then
interesting. Well, I'll come back to that. Keep going.
So this was, I would say 4th edition. This was 4th edition 40K. So I actually didn't play any 4th edition 40K because there was no scene in Santa Cruz for 40K happening at that time. So I skipped 4th edition. But then 5th edition picked up, and the Santa Cruz Warhammer group really started coming together more frequently. And then it was shortly after Scott moved to Santa Cruz, he came to one of those meetups. And then he and I just hit it off from a similar hobby perspective, narrative mindset, personalities. And
Scott was very energetic. Like when he was into 40K, he was very energetic and really wanted to share with you and hear what you had to say.
Yeah. And really drove that narrative aspect. So he and I really kind of tag teamed together and started the G3 Santa Cruz group, which we then, as the Santa Cruz Warhammer group kind of phased out, because they were really more into the hobby side of things and the game side of things, where we were very much, let's tell these elaborate narrative stories. And as far as like roles of the group, I'm very happy to bring people together and like drive things, but I don't need to be the front man for it. So I was like very happy to have Scott for that. He has got so much energy and passion for that. He could talk your ear off for the rest of your life about whatever,
whatever he's excited about.
Whatever. Yes. So that, like, for me, I just got to be more behind the scenes. Like I did the website, the graphic design, photography, like documenting game days, things like that. A lot of idea, just bouncing them back and forth, more of like scenarios and logistics, things like that. And really let him take the driver's seat of like presenting the narrative and putting on the game days and things like that. So that was a fun partnership. And from that, and just kind of similar time, this all kind of happened.
It all kind of happened.
Time.
Yeah.
The same time I met both you
There's
guys.
a couple interesting threads through all this.
Yeah.
Right. One, game stores tend to focus people.
Yeah.
Two, 40K is I have found it to be, for the most part, like it's the exception where people are not friendly that you meet within the 40K community.
Yeah.
I have found, which when you find somebody who is not particularly friendly or welcoming, it's jarring because you're like, wait a minute. What?
Why are you here?
Yeah. Why are you involved in this? The paths that we all took to get here, I mean, you can see how that kind of all lines up. But the other interesting thing there is we all had groups of friends that maybe then overlapped a little bit, kind of. And people, I think groups will grow and shrink and morph, right, a bit. We were playing for a while with the Fault Line 40K guys. Then I kind of didn't really like the direction they were headed for certain things, so I kind of bailed on that. Not to say what they're doing is wrong. It's just it wasn't the direction I wanted to go. I love that their narrative approach and all that. I just didn't want to try to turn it into some kind of money making industry.
Yeah,
which I think that's what they were focused on at the time, and I don't know if they still are. I signed up for their event, by the way.
Oh yeah, if that weekend works out, I'm actually excited
because it might interfere with the Tacoma thing. Anyway, but there's so not only that I found too that when you begin to kind of cross pollinate into different groups, you see different approaches people are taking. And then the cool thing about Warhammer 40K too is, as we've said, there's the hobby aspect of it. There's the pillars of it, right? There's the hobby, the collecting, the playing. And even within the playing, there's different approaches, right? I went through a phase where I was enjoying playing tournaments, not so much a tournament player now. Not to say I wouldn't play a tournament game or two. I don't want to do 3 games in a day standing at a table.
Yeah.
That's just not my style. I get that people want to. When I was playing tournaments, I was playing with the guys that would run the Grand Wa out on the battleship. Like, that was amazing. It was a tournament event. It was not meant to be like hyper competitive. Then Reese Robbins and those guys who formed Frontline. I was confused Fault Line and Frontline. When they formed Frontline game group, like they were focused on like, we want to make an extremely competitive event.
Right.
And to a degree, I think there was a bit of friction between the guys that were running like the Grand Wa and then Reese's group who wanted to come in and kind of take over the area, the scene in the area.
Yeah.
They ended up realizing how expensive I think it is in the Bay Area to run events and moved elsewhere down to Southern California and then eventually move into LVO, but start the whole, tournament scene. Like I can't remember what they're calling it, but basically the circuit, right?
I think they started ITC.
Yeah, they did. They absolutely did, which is a pretty brilliant idea for people who are interested in playing in that direction.
They've always approached it with a very high level of competition.
Absolutely.
As the mindset and the approach.
Yeah. And the Las Vegas Open differs in tonality from Nova, from Adepticon. Like, you feel it when you walk into the room. It's like, these people are here to play to win. I feel like people are sizing each other up in the hallways.
They're taking it really serious.
And they're taking it very seriously. And I can't do that. So it's just not, but the great thing is I have other options, that I can pursue. So I think, I think it's interesting. Like, they clearly hit a nerve where people want to do things that way and it's been very successful. Then you talked about the inner circle.
Yeah.
Which kind of focuses on the painting. For me, my intro to the painting thing has really been self-applied and then like CK Studios. Right. And tank weathering class I took recently with Mr. Just.
How recently?
Another joy of when I lived in Sacramento.
And seeing that whole different approach. And then honestly, I think what elevated my painting level was running into you guys and seeing the stuff you were doing. And, okay, now the focus became, let's get really good looking stuff on the table. I mean, I thought I was pretty proud of my Tyranids at the time. I still am. But so you have a focus, groups that come together for different reasons or come together for one reason, but find their niche in another direction. Nova Open is charity and competition. Although they're competitive, like LVO sets out to like, we're going to make the largest competitive 40K tournament. Like, that's literally what their mandate is.
Yeah.
Adepticon's like, we have the 40K tournament and the objective. We also have this massive team tournament where people bring these huge displays and we have 100 other ways to play, just, or we're running an old world tournament, I mean,
there's something for everyone.
There's narrative.
You want to play Combat Patrol.
There's Space Hulk. There's, all that stuff. I was actually heading there, but you beat me to it, so that's fine.
Ow.
So it's interesting that 40K, and that's what we're here to really talk about, it becomes a focal point. It gives you a common language to discuss with people, but then even within that, there's this huge element that you can go to, and you can go to, hey, well, we also like board games, so we're going to go play board games, or we like painting, or we like role-playing games. But it's interesting the way that these groups form. And I we did a episode a long time ago on gaming clubs. Yeah. We don't have like a formal gaming club. Like, I would say the stuff they're doing out in Davis is closer to a gaming club. For us, it's, do you want to get together? When can you get together? We'll play. Fault Line is more of like a gaming club.
Yeah.
That's not really necessary here, where we have space. In places like England, like when I went to England and I went to the gaming club out there. I went to 2 different gaming clubs out there. Like, I could see why it's a necessity for everybody to throw in their dollars, rent a hall.
Yeah.
They don't have the space.
Everyone's got tiny apartments. They don't have garages, like tiny apartments. You just don't have physical space to store armies, play a game, set up a table. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there was a whole different approach to it there, just as I'm sure there is in other tiny metropolitan places where you don't have, I should say large metropolitan places where you don't have the space.
I'd be willing to bet, though, those clubs are still rallying around specific principles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Somebody sets that's a great point.
That's
a great point.
Any club. So when I think back over all these different groups, and as you said, Nova Open and Frontline and Adepticon having, externally look probably pretty similar.
Yeah.
There is a set of values there that's driving it. I just spoke of my very first group that, people in our local area, small town, not as small as it seems actually anymore, but whatever, would say like how we were kind of elitist and snobby. And it was like, no, we just want to play with fully painted stuff, or at least you're moving forward towards fully painted. And that was always our stance as well, of like, no, you're moving towards that fully painted. That painting aspect was what we gathered around, and we recognized that in each other. And it was a few years of hanging out before we all went like, oh, this is actually why we kind of hang out together.
Right.
It's the thing that the gravity that
Right.
we do together.
We want it to look like the magazines. We have these values that we have kind of rallied around. And that doesn't mean you can't rally around other values or be excited about other things, but it does set a tone of expectation. You know, it sets a reasonable, and it also sets an access point, like of this is how you can engage with this group. What are they doing? Well, if you don't want to do that, then don't be grumpy that you showed up and it's not what you wanted when what they told you up front was like, that's not what we do.
And this actually dovetails right into my next kind of point around it. Like we talked about how groups kind of find each other and get together. And now with the internet, I mean, it's easier than ever to meet other people, you know, in the area. As we
were joking about your dating site for 40K.
Yeah. My proclivity for meeting men on the internet.
Yeah. Aaliyah uses that with me. She's like, are you going to go meet some, whenever we move, it's like, you can go meet guys on the internet?
Yep.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Found some good ones.
Which is conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And conflict within these gaming groups, because inevitably, it's going to occur. Right. I remember playing EverQuest back in the day, and we had a large guild, and this one guy was just being a real jerk. And I told the guild leader, "Hey, you know, what's up with this guy?" And he goes, "Listen, in a group this size, there's always going to be one person that's an asshole, you know." And I normally don't swear on the show, but that was verbatim what he said. And that was a learning lesson for me, you know, 20 odd years ago. That I was like, yeah, no matter what. I mean, there's always, and it's not even that the guy he just has a different view on,
not in alignment with the expectations of the group. Yeah.
But to your point, people would come in and be like, oh, well, this isn't what I wanted. Okay. So, but I will bet within this group, there's somebody that might be interested in the same dynamic that you're interested in as well. But also within these groups, then you can run into conflict in terms of if somebody's cheating at the game and is found cheating, or somebody's, you know, difficult to work with or play with rather, or, you know, socially awkward. Whoa, that's not ever going to happen
amongst
in a 40K game group. And so, you know, how those things get handled can be very different from group to group too, because within a friend group, it gets handled one way. And I would argue sometimes we have handled those things unsuccessfully here in our friends group, as well as successfully in some cases. If for those that like, I follow Seth Skorkowski. He's a YouTuber who does a bunch of stuff on, in particular on Call of Cthulhu, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And he's run role-playing games for years, as have I. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, every piece of advice is, I have a bad player, they do X, Y, or Z, or I have this player who's doing this. What should I do about it? It's the same answer every time. Have a conversation with the person outside of the game.
Yep.
And figure out what's going on, and just open and honest conversation. And that doesn't mean that's going to solve the problem in terms of now that person capitulates or becomes what you're expecting. It may be the end of that relationship in that particular category, meaning like maybe we don't play 40K together anymore, and that's the best solution for us. But having that just a conversation is usually the right answer.
Yeah.
That can lead to other issues as well too.
Yeah. I'll say there's two things coming to mind to me when it's conflict resolution. One part of this comes from my teaching background. Of knowing how to engage in those conversations is tough. Of going to the person and saying, going to somebody and saying, hey, I don't like that it's probably not going to work out really well for you because you've attacked them. And they're going to say, well, I don't like that and now that's all the further we're going to get. The other option, if this is like, and take this with a grain of salt, do your own research. This is kind of armchair psychology, but it's effective communication skills. Mm-hmm. Go to them with I statements. Frame from yourself. I felt blank is the easiest one. I feel statements. I felt frustrated when we agreed to play a game of 40K and you showed up with a tournament list and you delighted in railroading me off the table the entire game. And that's the third time we've done this. I would really like it if we could have a different experience. All of that was there's nothing to argue with. That was my experience. I would like something different.
Right.
The other part that goes hand in hand there that's undeniable, and I think this in terms of groups and sometimes happens in the classroom, the conflict piece is working with teenagers. How do I not address you in a confrontational way is right. 101 is I make it about what I'm doing, not about what you're doing, right? Like kids off task and screwing around. I really need you to get back on task for me. What can I do to help you get back on task?
Right.
What can I do to help you? Right. It's not about you and your behavior. We're going to talk about what I want. So that's the teaching piece. The other side of it though, is that expectation piece, that if there's a misalignment of expectations and wants, the conversation might not matter, but you are so much better armed to go into that conversation if you know your own expectations and wants.
Yeah.
So I want, and I come on the show from time to time and I worry that people are like, you hate competitive play. I'm like, no, that was the entire cornerstone of one of my groups was competitive play. Yeah. I really enjoy it. For you, I'm at a point where I'm like, 3 hours on a time limit or 6 hours or 10 hours, however long the tournament day is, standing over a table on a time limit is, I'm like, I'm good. I'm okay. But if one player is viewing the game with a competitive mindset and the other isn't, and the two of you haven't had an open communication about that, you have a misalignment, and the person who did not agree to play competitively is going to have a worse experience without having any say in it.
Most likely. Yeah.
Right. That it's, and that's one of those group dynamic places that often conflict will come up if one person in the group is interested in pushing that dynamic and everybody else is doing something else. The entire group tends to, because people don't want to have the awkward conversation, will just elevate to that let's play more competitively without necessarily addressing that. So having a sense of what is your game group about is really powerful.
That's a very, very good point.
Yeah. So if our game group is about hanging out and having some laughs and beer and pretzels, and some friends of mine back in the day used to use the phrase smoking and joking, and nobody smoked. I just liked the phrase because it's just joking.
Joking and joking.
But I don't know, that vibe it created of, it's a beer and pretzels game is a common saying that if that's what you're doing, then you are safe and hey, we've talked about that. That's the vibe we come to this with. This is a camaraderie thing. Yeah. I've said for years, I play 40K because it's the social game.
Yes.
Because it's the most widely played game.
Yep.
If I was left to just me all by myself, I would probably have picked another game historically. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I also know I can go to any town and find people who are probably playing 40K. But then I'm going to come with my own set of baggage and expectations now. And I can have those conversations.
You're going to have to identify okay, where's this group?
Yeah.
Right. Where's the group that's like this? Oh, that doesn't exist.
What do they focus on?
Yeah. Okay. Can I help show some people in this group how this might be another way?
Right.
Yeah.
Or do I want to adapt to their way of playing?
But I have to understand that may not ever happen.
Right.
How many times back in 5th, 6th, 7th edition were we talking about having the conversation before playing a game? What do you want to do? What kind of game is this going to be? What kind
Nothing
of
has changed there. That's the same.
The cool thing about an established group is that conversation is kind of unspoken now. It's just a known entity. This group is established. This is what we're about. This is what your game is. This is your expectation.
Unless we're going to deviate from that.
Correct.
Right? Unless it's hey, so I'm going to go play a tournament. I need you to bring something tough.
So now the conversation happens when you want to go away from kind of that standard, which is a cool place to have a established game group, sit in a, it knows what it is.
Jody makes a really good point. Understanding what your group is about.
Yeah.
And then, I talked a little bit about conflict resolution, group dynamic. I think you nailed most of that. I think if you're looking at an organized group, a group that's a club of sorts where you're pitching money in or you're doing something like that, then you're probably going to have to get a little more documented about some of those experiences as well. If somebody becomes a difficult member of that club, who handles, because it's more there than just not just a group of friends anymore. There's an actual organization to it.
Yeah.
So there needs
structure. There's money.
Yeah. So then there needs to become why are the rest of us upset that this one person is difficult or this two people are difficult or whatever? How is that handled? And that can be handled in a number of ways. I've seen hey, who's the president of the club at the time? Who's who's a sergeant at arms. He's got to, I don't know what the actual, I do know I don't want to be that. Like,
right.
I don't want to be, but if I lived in the UK and that was how I got my games, I had to go to a club to play my games. Well, I'd make damn sure that I was a fun guy to play.
You want to protect your and everyone else's experience.
But I'd also look for a club that wasn't tournament focused.
Sure.
Right.
Right. Like that wouldn't, and listen, in the UK, I know you could find one that isn't, but I'd try to find my group. So yeah, I think that, and I mean, that leads to my next point, which is camaraderie and social bonding. You spoke about how this is a social game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when the worst games of 40K I have ever had is when the person across the table from me is not involved socially. They're just there focused on the game. And I've talked about my one bad experience. I probably had a couple, but my one bad experience that sticks with me in a 40K tournament environment was the guy would say nothing. Like it was literally like, these guys are moving here. They're shooting at that. I'd be like, okay, here's what I say. Oh, so how's your day going? These guys are moving here. They're going to shoot this. They're going to do that. And it was like, and he systematically tore me apart on the table.
Right.
Yeah. And I've said this before. And then he got to a point where he was like, this is usually a point where people just, what do you call
Pack it up.
Concede. And it was funny because I was literally about to, like, he wasn't wrong. I was literally about to. And I was like, oh no, nope, we're going to the end now. And at the end, I had one guy left on the table and I was like, I did not get tabled.
Not tabled.
You do not get full points.
Pyrrhic victory.
Because heck would you.
But it was a terrible experience. I mean, it still sticks with me. The best games I've had for me, now that may be a perfect game for somebody else. Especially somebody who's maybe socially awkward, doesn't necessarily want to have conversation about their kittens or look at my picture of my puppy or whatever. But some of the best games I've had have been with the two of you where we're not concerned about the time. We're laughing. Hey, let's take a break, go grab lunch, come back. Okay, now I'm doing this. Like those games.
When Asserman gets teleported back to the battle barge.
Yes. Or when, who did I shoot in the face with the las cannon? I called it. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to charge me. I'm going to hit him in the face.
You called an Overwatch shot on my charge.
That was it.
You saying that was a good week for you.
So, but I mean, those games,
the dice.
we still think about those moments, and we were laughing at the game we just played of Adeptus Titanicus with Sky. I mean, we were laughing when stuff would blow up. It's like, hey, if that social aspect isn't there for me, I struggle. And what I would say is I have built, because of not just us all gaming together, but also the podcast, a level of camaraderie with people. And one of our close friends died, which made me recognize these are my very close friends, and I care about them. So, and all that stems from the gaming group. Right. Which I hesitate to even call a gaming group now, because it's more just like we've gone out and done stuff that is not gaming with the wives and that kind of stuff. But at its core, it all functioned from when we get together for the most part. It's like, let's play a board game.
The game group 40K. Evolved into a friend circle.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the joy of the camaraderie and the social bonding piece is you have a predetermined point of contact to learn if there is a greater friendship there.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. We're going to talk about, and then from you have 40K toys, I have 40K toys, Josh has miniatures. He's a weirdo, but we'll accept him. And then it turns out, oh no, Josh has 40K toys too.
Right.
And we all really enjoy painting them, and we can start talking about that painting piece. And then we realize we have other things. And hey, have you ever seen the show Letterkenny? And you're like, actually, I watched Shoresy, and now I've watched all of both of them.
Yes.
And I'm still quoting them too much. But that's just that like social camaraderie, that bonding that I see in the notes here. You guys had the old Deep Strike event. So
yes.
Yeah.
That you can do stuff that is more than just gaming. So funny enough, after last year's Adepticon, I got COVID at Adepticon, got a pretty gnarly case. And one of my RPG groups, to this point of like doing something social, we'd all bought tickets for everybody in the RPG group, plus like spouses and to go see the D&D movie.
Oh,
I coordinated it. I got it up. I bought the tickets for everybody. They had a great time.
That was a great movie.
They had a lot of fun. It was so fun. But yeah, but it was so cool to get to do that and yet to then expand that group to bring in friends and some of those people play in the aforementioned Sunday group now because we couldn't bring them into the teacher group because small group. It's a big single group, but yeah, so that, and then that's how those groups grow and evolve and you start meeting new people to bring in.
Yeah. And I think there's other things within this you can do. We've started doing these Grimdark Gauntlet.
Hobby hangouts.
Yep. I want to do more of that. Like I want to not just do it online, but like, one thing I forgot to mention Hobby Progress was Aaron came over because he's trying to get ready for Adepticon and he's struggling getting his Grey Knights on new bases and all this. He came over. I was like, well, let's figure out how we're going to paint these bases. That's what you need help with. So I helped him figure out how we're going to do it. Knocked them all out in 20 minutes. And then, okay, you got to put them on all on the bases, get them off the whole base, put them on, which he's now done. But it's like, as he and I were doing that, I was like, I want to do more hobby hangouts where we're not necessarily playing a game, but we all just come focus on, let's get some hobby done because socially, like I love the environment where you're just chatting and goofing off while you're painting.
Yep. Productive and fun.
Yeah. Book clubs. There's so many Black Library books at this point. We've talked about, we used to do it. It was called Forbidden Lore, on the ICs, and we would read the book. We'd get the author on it and talk about it at the end. I'd love to do more of that too. The last one we were going to do, I think Jeff and I were going to do remember when 40K came out with the kids books?
I've read a few of them.
I was trying to get one of the authors to come on and we would actually do a Forbidden Lore on one of those books. And I couldn't ever get in touch with any of those authors because we thought it would have been fun.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, the Deep Strike event, we've done White Elephant, gift exchanges. We've done all that kind of stuff. It's all theming, gaming themed and stuff, but it's mostly just social hangout stuff.
I will say around that idea of camaraderie and doing those kind of things, there is a role within the group of somebody kind of has to be the point person.
Yes.
Though. Yeah. You need I jokingly call it the doer. You need the person who's like, hey, we're going to do this thing. Everybody has ideas, but somebody has to be the let's do the thing.
Quarterback calling shots.
And what I've found is, and this sounds like, I feel like this is a cop out, but I think it is genuinely, I've mentioned about like switching all these different groups. And then I've found a very comfortable place in all these different groups is because on a level, I understand that. I chalk this up to my middle brother is unbelievably charismatic. Like doesn't seem like a real human kind of charismatic.
I hate him already.
He's incredibly good looking. He models and does very, he's just annoying.
So
he's a great athlete.
The
and then there's me, and I got, you ever see twins? Guess which one I am. It's not Arnold. So I understand that notion of
Danny DeVito.
Hey. So I understand that notion of like somebody being the face or whatever. Like I just grew up around it.
Sure.
And so when I join a group, I mean, I am perfectly capable of organizing an event. I've run tournaments. I've run game days. I've run plenty of stuff. But I also can appreciate, hey, this person has a vision. How can I support that? So my role in the group is to support the thing happening. And that's going to serve me well in terms of camaraderie. And I think there's a value, whether your group is formal or just an informal friend group, that when you want to do these things, who's the doer? And then if it's you, ask for help. I mean, when we were doing the larger narrative events, I was building a lot of terrain and helping edit a lot of rules packs and and I've done that for, when Scott was doing it and part of it. And I did that for Anthony. And like, that was a very conscious choice of, I want to play in this cool event. So how can I help support that social environment?
Absolutely.
How can I contribute? And I don't need to be the face.
Right. Yeah. Whereas I kind of tend to be the driver of a lot of things. But then you get a game system like Necromunda or Legion of Imperialis, and then Josh seems to be the driver. So I think that can vary too.
So I nag
I'm
Josh.
a really interesting split between the both of you. Because I can absolutely drive, especially for specialist games where I've gone deep and I know the systems really well, but I'm also very happy to be the support person. Like, let me help you bring this vision to life with whatever skills I can throw at it. So, yeah.
And then, I mean, amongst that too, and I think it needs to be said, like, how is your group approaching like inclusivity and diversity within that group. I mean, listen, I mean, we're the three of us are all West Coast liberal, folks. I mean, for us, I don't think we're open to everybody, male, female, whatever, gay, straight, black, white, Hispanic. I mean, you have to be. There's so many Hispanic and Asian folks. The day that Austin and AJ were here, and we both realized they were both named Austin, and then AJ said, "Why my friends call me AJ?" And I said, "Why didn't you say it from the beginning?" And then Austin Lynn had said, "Well, you can call me Asian, Austin." And I said, "I cannot do that."
Yes,
I absolutely cannot do that. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, like hearing Doug talk about it, he'd be like, "Here's Fat Pete, here's Smelly Tony." I mean, like,
right.
I think they have a friend, Fat Gary.
Gary, yeah.
Right. And they called him Fat Gary because there were two Garys in the group. And he says, well, and then when the one Gary left, the Fat Gary goes, "Well, how come I still have to be Fat Gary? Because there's only one Gary in the group." It's a very different dynamic here where we are. So, I mean, obviously these sensitivities are going to be different based on where you are and whatnot. But I think the more diverse you open your group up to, the more experiences you're going to have and the more views you're going to see. And, it excites me when Shell's interested in playing 40K, and it not just because she's my wife or because she's a woman, but it just gives us another view on it. And sometimes like we forget that view because like she's new to the new to the game. And
super valuable.
Yeah. And we've been around forever. Like we take some things for granted.
And I really would encourage that in the terms of inclusivity and diversity within your gaming group. If you're the old grognardy neckbeard game group, great, rock on. But also just in terms of diversity of age of gamer, like, are you doing things to help bring people into the hobby at all?
Great point.
And experience new things. It's been one of the joys to go back to that Sunday monthly RPG group. We have people who have been playing their entire lives, Josh, and others. And we also have players who are literally, these are their first sessions, are these Sunday group sessions, and everywhere in between. And it's funny, Matt being relatively new to game mastering and role-playing games and is taken to it because doer and has built a whole thing. He told me the other day, we were setting up like who was going to be at which tables on a Sunday. And he's like, yeah, I don't want that group. And I was like, why? He's like, it's all dudes. I was like, okay. And he goes, I've only run for all dudes once and I would rather not.
Oh, how interesting.
And I was like, whoa, what a weird experience.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, most GMs have only run for all dudes.
Yeah, right. And I was like, and
I mean, it's changed clearly, right? With 5th edition D&D and that kind of thing. I mean, it's become more popular and variety.
The diversity is much improved. But it was a great moment for me, who has been playing since the 80s off and on, and went, that's really cool that's your perspective.
Yeah, that.
And I will go have a day of fart jokes or whatever it is.
It made me think of when Rings of Power came out, which I enjoyed. I get that some
really did too.
People didn't care for it. Fine, whatever. It was funny because the big controversy at the time was there's a guy who's black who's playing an elf, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's a thing. I guess that's a thing for some people.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then what somebody pointed out to me, like in the dwarves, in the Harfoots, all this, like you had somebody of like Asian descent, black, Hispanic, and I was like, oh, I didn't notice. And I felt so proud of myself. It was like,
well,
I was
are
like
3 white dudes sitting here right now of a certain age.
No doubt.
Even you.
That's why I have a podcast.
Even you, Josh.
But I mean, my point is, like we grew up in this area.
Yeah.
And this is a very diverse area. And so for me, I'm thankful I grew up in this area.
Yeah, same.
And I, so anything I can do to open it up. But you raised a really interesting point, Jody, which was a younger person or a new person to the game, especially 40K, where it's very complex. Like you have to take that into account. Sticking them up against your beat list, guy who just is probably the wrong way to enter him into the game. If you want him to keep playing or her to keep playing, if you want them to keep playing. And so taking all that into account, especially, we would run game days here sometimes, and it got to the point where we were just drawing names out of a hat for who was playing who. But if somebody new were to the group, or, when Shell was like, I want to play, but I'm a little intimidated, I'm like, let's play a team game. I'll be your teammate. We'll play against these guys who are also going to be very understanding of you're new and helping you work through it. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. I was thrilled that I got to play a one-on-one game with Shell, and was like, I felt genuinely honored that.
When did you do that?
Here, a long time ago. I mean, it was a while back, a long time ago now.
It would be a long time ago now, because she hadn't played for a while.
But yeah, I did, and was like, I understood when I was doing that like, and also I need one. I'm not going to talk down.
Yeah,
like new player talk down is don't do that. Just that's a pet peeve of mine. It's anyway. So, but at the same time, like, I also need to understand that there's just tactical parts of the game that a new player isn't going to understand. Play to the narrative. Oh, these are my orcs. They're going to run at you and go, rah, and that's how I'm going to play this game.
Yeah.
I'm not dumbing it down. I am playing a different style of game that's going to create hopefully an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, actually, you're one of the people I'd be like, oh, Shell should play against you. Like
you did.
Yeah. Oh, that makes complete sense now that I did that.
In that new player regard, also, this is where being whatever your group dynamic is, organized, informal, whatever, becoming an ally with your store in all the meanings of the term ally with your store.
Yeah.
Meaning both versions. But stores can be such a great rallying point, like you were talking about, Josh. A good, healthy game store is one that new people walk into and feel like they want to be a part of what's going on there.
It's like
it's palpable when you walk into one that doesn't have that.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I comedically in my head call them the dirt stores because they feel dirty.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I should walk in and feel excited to be here.
Yeah. I mean, this is the whole reason I got into 40K. I've said that 100 times before. I wanted to get into the remote control car racing, and that group was not friendly, and that turned me away from it immediately. So, remember, we're all ambassadors of the hobby out there. So, all right.
Yeah.
Listen, we need to take a short break. We'll come back, and then we have some more points I want to discuss as we close out the show. Well, not even close out the show. We have a whole nother half of the show. Be right back. All right, we're back. We're continuing to talk about groups and how they organize and how they mature and develop. Next, I want to talk a little bit about, we were kind of ending that last discussion around new players coming to the group and that kind of thing, which kind of leads to how do we in groups help people with kind of education of the game and in skill development. And in more formal groups, you could, well, let me back that up. Rather than formal groups, in informal groups, we just talked about how I naturally picked you, apparently, to say, hey, if Shell's going to play somebody solo, it should be somebody like Jody, because I knew, apparently at the time, and I would make the same decision now. Like I knew, you would be, one, you have teaching background, but two, also, you're the kind of person that understands, hey, this is somebody new to the hobby and I'm not here to crush their spirit. In fact, you want to help encourage that spirit. I'm not saying throw a game, but I'm saying,
right.
You're making sure they have an enjoyable experience
and want to come back.
And so I think it's important in informal groups to recognize who's playing who and trying to help ensure, everybody's having a good time. If somebody expresses concern or is a little trepidatious, is that the word I'm looking for, about getting involved, as I know, and I'm using Shell as an experience, like her main problem with playing 40K, because she wants to play, like when we have these big game days, is I don't want to be a burden on the person. And I'm like, listen, you're not. And as much as I tell her she's not, she's going to feel like it. And I know what she's going through, because when we went up to Reading to play AT, I was like, man, I need to know these rules a little better, because I don't want to be a burden on the person I'm playing against. Now, mind you, I have a little bit more experience with that than Shell does, but if somebody's new to the group, my friend's kid, Mason, who was playing Tyranids, right?
Yeah.
If we brought him here on a game day, I would be like, all right, number one, who's not going to crush Mason under their heel.
Right.
But number two, who's going to be okay with spending some time with this kid, ensuring he has a good experience, you know, because they're giving up some of their time too.
Yeah.
If I had a real formal group, like I would go about creating some type of like mentorship program or something, you know, but in an informal situation, like in a club, usually the people that are coming are not brand new, but in the event that they were, like you'd want to make sure.
An ambassador.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good term.
Yeah. And I have heard of clubs
said it at the end of the thing
of clubs that have that, like that there are organized groups or, I know there are some competitive groups that have a vetting process, which is going the other direction, but like, no, you have to go play these 3 or 4 people. And it's not like I have heard of horror stories of you have to win a game against whatever, but I've heard versions of
their choice,
right? It's your group. Do what you want. That's what you like. Rock. More so it was about like, no, you're going to play 3 really competitive games to make sure that when you're playing at the competitive level, you're still enjoyable to play against.
Yeah. And I would also say enjoyable to play against. You're playing at competitive, and that's what you really want to be doing here.
Right.
Like it's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's, I could see that. And I can see that being a totally legitimate, like if I went to that group and they're like, you can play these 3 competitive games, I go, well, let me see if I'm really interested in doing this.
Yeah. It's again, matching of expectation.
Yeah. I can understand.
When I came to Santa Cruz, the local game store group, and actually it's weird because Santa Cruz has a long history of Santa Cruz Warhammer being a fantasy battle group, a rank and flank. And it's very small, but it was a very competitive group of players. So I had to take my fantasy battle skills and really up my level so that I could be not so I could be a part of that group, but so that I knew I would have a more enjoyable time. I had to do some skill development. And so I approached other people and said, hey, you are clearly a better player than I am.
Yeah. Coach
me up. Like I want to set up a game where I am getting coached as I play about the decisions I'm making and getting that reflection, which is an amount of to your own self, you know, thine own self be true. Like know yourself a little bit of where you're at and be willing to go, I lost a game, not because of dice. I lost a game because I got outplayed. Yeah. Like how about they're just better than me at this? That's okay. That means you can get better. You know, but having, some, you know, with an informal group like us, I'm curious sometimes about like asking about painting stuff even, you know, do people feel safe to ask about how did you paint this? Or do you even want that feedback? Or, you know, it can be tough in friend groups about giving unwanted feedback. Mm-hmm. The internet is great about giving unwanted feedback. I in fact have gotten to the point where unless somebody posts a picture of a miniature and it says, I want feedback, don't give feedback.
Yeah.
You don't know why they posted that. That might be the best thing they've ever posted. And it's going to feel pretty crappy when you're like, if you would have just, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, so how do you develop a skill? And again, that notion of expectations, what is the expectation within your group of helping people develop their skills?
Yeah.
Versus, you know, and I will say of my early game group that I talked about where people like, oh, you guys are snobby and elitist. We didn't have a vehicle for that where we would like be like, hey, we'll help you get there was a guy in our group though that we did that with, but he went out of his way to ask for that help to get his stuff painted because he wanted to play with us.
It's funny. There's a review. I was actually going through our reviews. We've had like 2 reviews on iTunes globally, like in the last 3 months. And getting reviews in iTunes is a big shift. Like it's a big deal for getting exposure to podcasts. So again, I'll throw it out there. If you're getting your podcast through iTunes or you use iTunes in some way, if you want to go leave us a review, that'd be great. One of the reviews, and I always look at both the positive and negative reviews because a lot of times like we get feedback. Josh and I got feedback that we agree too much on stuff. We're like, we agree.
We agree with that.
We agree on that too.
You're right.
We gotta get somebody in here I can argue with a bit. So, you gotta get Justin playing games again or something. But one of the reviews was how the show is elitist. How we say we don't care about stuff being painted, but then in the same sentence I'll say, you know, if you're working towards painting something, like that's all I'm asking. So yeah, that's what I'm asking. I mean, I guess, I don't want to play an army of total gray plastic. Like if that's elitist, okay.
That's a standard for our group, but that doesn't mean
that's not
the only way to play. That's the way we play.
Certainly not to say like Josh, you build this whole new army and you're like, okay, I want to figure out if I've built this correctly. Can I play a game and see? Yeah, go for it. And then next time you got a unit painted. And next time you got,
the last game of 1-on-1 40K we played was with our Tyranids versus Sharkadons, and half my army was prime style or gray plastic because
I've just grown beyond that point in my hobby. But yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. Leave us reviews. That's where I was going. Please. But yeah, I mean, speaking from an educational skill-based kind of thing, like it's important to recognize everybody in the group is not at the same level. And I think the most successful groups are able to assimilate new people into them who are new to the hobby. And that's probably the biggest challenge right there. Somebody who's never played before, bringing them in, getting them excited about the game.
Yeah.
Or they're already if they're at this point, they're already excited about it, but making sure you don't crush that excitement.
Are you willing to pivot your own fun in order to increase your group?
I think it's a short-term investment for a long-term reward.
Absolutely. And it can be hard if you're not thinking in terms of like the broad scope of this episode of unity in the Grimdark and the social aspect of the game. And if you don't have that moment to go, would I be willing to not play with our new friend a game to sit down and help them get some primer on their models or get those base coats done? Or hey, I know you showed up to game today. Let's sit down and let's do some hobby for a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's help you do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me bring a couple brushes. Let me bring you some of my extra paints because you probably have extra paints.
Hey, you're playing Marines and you don't own an airbrush. Let's get them all coated.
Yeah. Let's get you 60% of the way there.
There you go.
Yeah. There's that, like you said, short-term cost for long-term benefit.
Yeah. Then you have, there is not a group out there that doesn't have some kind of now digital support of their, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's we all share Instagram accounts, whether it's, Discord, whether it's, whatever. I think this has been a double-edged sword. Like I think I'm turning into an old guy. Because I'm really getting soured on like social media in general. That being said, like I think we have one of the greatest Facebook groups around. I pretty much use Facebook just for the groups and in chatting with some of you guys, because I just haven't for some reason been able to switch over to Discord as my like main.
It's good for organizing events.
Thing.
Facebook is good for organizing events.
Super good for organizing events.
If any other platform could be as convenient.
Yep. And it's good because my family's on it. So like and I have a very large family. So I really we have a Facebook group for the family. I have the Facebook group for the show. We have like a private, like geek Facebook group that most of us locally are on that we just share stuff on occasionally. And then, I think I'm in like Herrick Games or something. I'm on their Discord. But my point is, these can be very valuable tools. As you said, for organizing events, I think Facebook's very good for that.
Yeah. Yep.
If I could just get rid of the maybe option on the am I going yes or no?
Come on, man.
I hate maybe so much.
I'll work on it. You're going to get a lot of no's now.
I'll take no over maybe.
You're getting no.
Until it becomes a yes.
And then I'll show up. Surprise.
And I think, okay. God, I hate you. But I think also once you have those groups and they can be very difficult to communicate in, and a lot of communication problems I think stem from forums, they stemmed from Facebook. Writing communication back and forth or chat is just in general a terrible way to iron out issues or grievances.
Yeah. Yep.
And the thing is, we all keep trying to do it. Like, I mean,
it's sure good at creating them though.
Yeah, it is.
It's super good at creating them.
English is a pretty vague language. So trying to just, get across complex thoughts and emotions and things like that.
Tone, inflection, all that's missing.
Makes such a difference.
Yeah. And so I really feel like they can be great for organizing stuff, but I think you take it for what it's worth and be careful there. We have a Facebook group that is very successful. We have a Discord that I think is very successful. I have met so many people through Facebook because of the show, right? I'm going down to Australia. We're staying with a family that I met through the show and Facebook. You know, we've just become good friends. Like, we have Zoom calls every now and then and just share, you know,
how it's going.
Yeah. And they're a great family, and we're super excited to see them, and they're going to show us the ropes and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, see Jeremy Woods out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing him his shirt.
Going to Warhammer World Down Under.
Yeah, that's right. Going to see his display. I'm very excited about that.
Can't wait to see pictures.
Yeah, I'll be posting all kinds of
Get
pictures.
some video content for
I'll get some B-roll.
for a short. Would be cool
B-roll.
to share that with everybody else. Yeah.
You might not understand that. You're not a...
I know. I'm not that kind of nerd. The kind of nerd I am, though, as a teaching nerd.
Yeah.
And I want to talk... I'm going to get on a little bit soapboxy, and I can't help it.
It's a small soapbox.
Yeah. Okay. I'll only be about an inch taller. So the impact of social media on interpersonal interactions is, especially for young people, is really well documented, and it's not good.
No.
It's overwhelmingly terrible.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I can't let this part go by where we're talking about the usefulness or problems of social media and digital platforms on the hobby.
Yeah.
Without at least acknowledging, you know, if your hobby has turned into watching YouTube and I don't remember
listening to podcasts
and listening to podcasts,
The worst.
and your only engagement with the hobby is engaging with other people talking about the hobby.
Yes.
Or demonstrating the hobby, you have a different hobby.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but it's not this community. It is a different community. My earlier concept or comment where I was talking about expectations, like what is your expectation? I think the lens that we are talking through all of this is one of social live interaction, meeting other people, spending time at the table, rolling dice, sharing love of miniatures, models, gaming, etc.
Correct.
There is a distortion that happens that is presented and triggers in us in a very similar way to that it's fulfilling that same niche of I'm having a meaningful social interaction. I would just caution people that if your air quotes social interaction is with people only on the internet and you don't have a real live conversation with those folks regularly, if you are no longer engaging with painting, modeling, hobbying, playing in any way, except to buy the product and then watch it online, I would really say just double check that you're happy with where that's all at. And if you are, you are. See last episode also on collecting health. But there's just such a slippery slope where you can spend hours and hours and hours and hours feeling socially fulfilled by watching people talk to you and doing so in a very informal way. You know, this podcast of making you feel like you're part of our game group. It's the great joy is that we are conversational about it. We do spend an hour talking about, you know, hobby progress and what we were working on and how we're excited to go to Adepticon in Australia and have upcoming trips. And you better believe that at the end of the month, I'm going up to Portland just to get away with the wife for a few days. And you better believe I'm going to some game stores.
Yeah. Oh, that's every city I go to. I go check out a game store.
You have to.
And is it social? Yeah. Like I'm interested to feel what the folks are like there and get the vibe of like,
for sure.
Not that I'm like counting down the minutes to move or anything, but if I were to move, would I want to play in this game store?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I genuinely approach it. Is it a dirt store? The dirt stores.
Seen a couple of those.
You know, so I just caution with the social, the digital platforms, especially the social media platforms of just being mindful of your interaction, not as a surrogate or a replacement for the actual hobby itself.
You know, what's interesting is we do get a number of people who will write into the show or post and say, I don't play anymore, but I still listen to the show because that's how I'm engaged. And I think to some degree, they feel like they kind of know us by now. I mean, we do kind of put our hearts on our sleeves out there. And we don't have like cool nickname like I'm the bear and you're,
Smokey
40K.
And I'm the bandits.
There you go. And now you know why we don't have names like that. But additionally,
swing and a miss.
Additionally, we put out there who we are because, we wanted to get to know people. But I hear what you're saying. But,
just keep it balanced.
But yeah, but it's funny because some people who also are maybe in an area where they're like, oh, I cannot engage with the hobby here. You guys are my lifeline to the hobby. That's a very different thing than I think what you're describing.
Yeah. There's a level of self-awareness there already in that state.
Oh, for sure.
Right. That I want this sort of experience and I'm not finding that in my area.
Right.
So I can at least remember why that's great. Yeah. And that's all I'm saying is just what happens to teenagers is they lose that connection between what's being presented as reality and actual reality.
It's a whole generational thing where the younger folks interact differently than we did. Mm-hmm. And the internet is their lifeline.
On the flip side of that, there's also the grognard side of things where like somebody who's been in the hobby a long time, they don't play that much anymore. They're not hobbying. They're not engaging that much, but they're still very active on social media, complaining about the hobby and actually gatekeeping people's enjoyment.
This is my favorite.
Of the hobby.
This is my favorite.
He's like, yeah, maybe I haven't played in 15 years because it got too expensive and they got plastic models. They got rid of all the cool computer squats.
Cause squats.
But that's so toxic, especially for trying to harbor and foster this environment in the next generation.
Which is why we're so selective as to who gets in our group and how they behave in our group. But in addition, that was my favorite. That was my favorite thing, especially when Warcry was, or not Warcry. What was it called? Hordes. What was the other side of the Hordes?
War Machine.
When War Machine was like hitting big for a while there, and it was like maybe a potential competitor to 40K, and you'd get these guys coming into the 40K forums and groups complaining about 40K and saying Warcry is better. And like, then why are you hanging out here, bro?
Right. It's currently happening in RPGs with 5e hate.
And this is why
people just showing up in 5th edition D&D forums to trash on it. And it's like, okay.
And this is, I always used to say, it's like
don't play it then.
It's like you and your girlfriend broke up. You keep driving past her house to see who she's dating. Yeah. Like, just move on.
Literally, nobody's talking about that.
Go ahead.
Just you.
Yeah. Go. So anyway, all right. Enough of the good warning talk.
Just like I said, I live it.
And a valid point about the gatekeeping thing, because you don't know who the audience is that you're usually interacting with.
You don't know where they're at in their gaming career, and you being very negative about something that they're about to hopefully be very excited about jumping into can really absolutely just shut it down for them also. Yeah.
And maybe a message in there about if you want feedback, ask for feedback.
Yeah. Like, I think that's a solid.
Start getting used to going, I would like feedback on, and then giving people the signpost that like, hey, at least
it's funny. I'm kind of at the point where like with my Black Legion, right? Like Justin's response was, hey, if we put an oil wash on those, that'd be great. I'm like, cool. Yeah, not going to happen. Like, I'm moving on, dude. Like, this is good enough. Maybe I'll go back and do an oil wash at some point, but
you certainly could,
but I agree with him. Actually, it probably would look cool. But okay.
But you can always.
I can always go back.
One.
Yeah, and we talked about doing that while you, like before you went gangbusters, and
but it's just like, let's just get this thing on the table.
But you have an army on parade.
Okay.
Sir.
Yeah. Yes, I do. And then this is my favorite part of this. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I think this is primarily, it can be negative, but it's primarily a positive thing, which is the economic impact of a group like this. And for example, trying to keep up with the Joneses, which is a term maybe some people aren't aware of, but it's like everybody around me is spending this money. I need to spend this money too, but also resource sharing. So when you have a group, and I think ours is a really good one because we're all in a kind of like divest ourselves of extra stuff at this point position. We have all spent a lot of money on 40K. I have spent a ridiculous amount of money on this hobby in the last 15 years. That being said, any other hobby would be just as expensive or more expensive. I also spent a ridiculous amount on old role-playing stuff too. Gamma World was like one of my favorite games, so had to have it. Then we played it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is terrible."
Yeah, the rules from the '80s
Still
not
love the
as
theme,
good.
but okay. So you got to be careful, especially as you're seeing where your group is. Make sure you don't feel like you have the need to keep up with that. If somebody's spending a lot, like often you hear the term, pay to win thrown around. There can be that in some cases in this game, and some people are always going to spend more money than others. Don't really resist the need to try to feel to keep up with them. Let me give you another example. And I know you guys are going to make fun of me for making this example. In the Porsche community, of which, by the way, I've sold my Porsche.
I didn't know that.
But we still have shells.
Okay.
No matter what you buy, somebody's always like, oh, you should have gotten X.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And it's ridiculous. Like somebody could buy a top of the line GT3. Oh, well, how come you didn't get it manual? Oh, why didn't you get that?
Right.
It's just like, shut up and let them enjoy this cool thing that they have bought. And I feel very strongly the same way about 40K. Hey, one of the criticisms I got at the Play on Tabletop, like you'll see in their group, was, well, how come you didn't bring Magnus and like a boatload of sorcerers? Because I didn't want to play a boatload of sorcerers and Magnus. Like you see that at every competitive table. I wanted to show you this ridiculous force along with these demons, because it looks cool.
That was classic 40K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a question of why didn't you bring this? It was,
you should.
This guy should have brought this. He doesn't know what he's doing list, but you know what? I can go look at a net list and pull up Magnus and a bunch of sorcerers as well. That's not what I'm trying to do here.
Right.
And I'm old enough and secure enough in my position that I don't really care what everybody else thinks about that. So anyway, I caution people not to try to keep up with the Joneses or keep up with the Armans or whatever.
Keep up with the Armans. They're pretty shiny.
But the other side of this coin, I think, is the more exciting one.
Yeah.
Which is the resource sharing. I know you were wanting to touch on this.
It's just, 40K and GW as a hobby is maligned for being expensive, and it is in its own way. I mean,
it is
compared
and it isn't.
Yeah, like compared to other hobbies, what are we talking about?
I do chuckle when role-playing game players are like, D&D is so expensive. And I'm like, I'm chuckling.
You don't know how far the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, man, dice prices. What the heck?
Right?
Sorry, this is a whole different show. So, but this is a rare instance where you can share the cost.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys in the last episode, there was the talk of like, I was the orc guy. Right? Like I had the orc army. I was the orc guy. I've moved on from that, but like embrace being the orc. You're the Black Legion player. Embrace being the Black Legion player. You're Necrons, whatever. Gross. Sharkanines. Yeah. Someday we might even use the right name. But like whatever it is that's your army, now you don't have to chase that. You don't have to go build the other thing. I wasn't joking earlier when I said I started an orc army because I hadn't seen anybody else do one.
Yep. This is why I did an Ultramarine army. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like people, they're the poster boys.
Show me one.
You never saw them. When I went to Adepticon that year, it was me and 3 other guys. And we're like, holy crap, we actually have Ultramarines.
It's like there ought to be a secret handshake for McCraig. But, that's the shared terrain. I've gotten rid of a ton of my terrain and I'm going to keep cutting it down. I'm going to build, I've already started it. It's well underway. A demon table. My 40K table is going to be a demon table.
Okay.
It will be that's it. I'll have stuff for maybe a few other games and drop terrain, but I don't need to have a city board and a such and such board. And
I have so much freaking terrain.
Well,
I
Carl's got this. That's why.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look how much money you're saving me,
I
Carl.
talked about this last time. It was just like, yeah.
But it's that rare instance where economically, to speak nothing of model sharing and kit bashing, and like that's its own awesome, rewarding thing.
Yeah.
But it's being part of a group. When we needed for G3, we needed tables. We literally all went down to the hardware store and chipped in on boards and paint and
Absolutely.
And started farming out. Hey, we need a reactor. Who's going to make the reactor? We need a demon tank? Who's going to make the demon tank? And that's so it's not only rewarding in a financial sense of you're not having to do everything out of pocket yourself, but it's also rewarding in terms of creativity.
Yeah.
And shared experience and load sharing. And then you get to do those hobby days together. And, there's so much economic good that comes out of a shared hobby experience.
Yeah. And additionally, hey, I'm looking for this piece. Does anybody have one? Yes, I have an extra one. Here you go.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I have a ton of these I don't need. Does anybody? I gave away to my friend Jamie, my Tyranid gaunts that came with Leviathan. Cause I'm like, I'm not going to use these. He's all, well, I'm painting up. They're yours. Just take them. And that will come back at some point, right?
Legions Imperialis.
Yeah.
Split the starter.
Splitting starter sets is always like super good.
Yeah.
Right. It's usually a super good deal. You would not be doing Solar Auxiliary if it wasn't.
Yeah, that is due to supply shortage. I literally said that to Josh. I was like, I wish I was playing Marines. I just can't get them. So I'm playing Solar Aux because that's what I could get.
They're really fun.
I'm not sad I'm playing them.
They
look amazing.
I like how they look. I like how they play.
But I mean, I think those are just like easy examples. But yeah, the load sharing, the paint days, if you're all getting together, I need this paint. I have this paint. I went and a couple years ago painted with the Adepticon spray crew before Adepticon. And man, if they got that dialed in, now that's a fully funded organization that they're working through, but holy mackerel, they are working as a team so well.
There's an extra layer on top of it. It's not just the economic or resource sharing too, but it's outside of the game camaraderie that's building because of the experience that's happening, or if you can share resources, whatever. But it's it really is just for the greater good of the group, and if people can help each other out, then the group just gets stronger.
Tau mentality.
I don't play Tau.
Oh, okay then. But you're not wrong.
I play Necrons. Everything was already ours. We were just taking a nap, and you're all trying to encroach on our space.
You're saying that reminded me of immediate obvious examples. So Matt recently bought a house over in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And there is a garage, actually pretty sizable garage with a partition side room. It wasn't a finished garage. So over a series of weekends, a bunch of us that play in those Sunday groups, we went over and we put up plywood and we sanded it. And Sarah came over and helped him dig a drainage trench to there's some groundwater coming up.
Wow.
And they dug a drainage trench. So there's a French drain on the sidewall. So we built shelving, we stained it. My old game table is going to go in there, and then a different guy is going to build a topper for sitting the whole group around it.
Nice.
And so everybody's...
That's a great example.
Right? Just chipped in either time or labor or brought over tools or whatever they could do.
Which wouldn't be possible without a group.
Right.
There
wouldn't even be a reason to
It wouldn't be a reason to have that room without the group.
Herrick Games is moving to a much larger space, and he's going to have room for tons of tables. And I was like, you know what? I got these tables, these wooden tables I created. They're sanded. I go, your knuckles are going to regret it. I go,
oh, the sand.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
You can put a table war mat over them, right? And I go, I got 4 of them. I go, one of them's painted dirt and grass. One's desert. I go, one's snow. So it's just white. And I go, and the other one is black. I go, but they can be repainted. I painted with house paint. I go, I'll bring them up. You can have them if you want them. And I go, they just go on folding tables. He's like, that would be great. They're yours,
Oh, it's so awesome. Yeah.
I mean, it's because of our group and our dynamic here that kind of thing. I don't feel like I'm giving something away. I will get back something, whether it's just the knowledge that I've helped a friend, or whether it's, later this guy says, oh, I have this, and does anybody need, I could use that. This kind of thing works well for our group.
Yeah.
My learning to use an airbrush was, there are 2 mics that we're doing Santa Cruz Warhammer. Big Mike.
Yep.
Big Mike had a, there it is, Big Mike. And I guess the other one wasn't Little Mike. It's just Mike and Big Mike.
Big Mike isn't as rude as fat Gary.
No, Big Mike is 6, well over 6.
He's tall.
Very
giant
muscular.
Firefighter.
Giant firefighter.
There you go.
So is Viking dude. But he had an airbrush and he came over and he was like, here's how it works. And then it was like, well, here, borrow mine. And I took his home for like a week or a weekend or something. And then it was like, yep, this is rad.
I need to get an airbrush.
But it was literally just, here, go use this. I gave somebody an air compressor and then got one for you. Which was funny. There was at one point I had 3 of them. And then that last one that died I was like, how am I out? I had 3 for a while, but I do have like 6 airbrush hoses now. So if anybody in the area needs it, but it's that sort of stuff. That's just what, especially if your groups had the good fortune of existing for a while, that you have those resources, you have those abilities to go, Carl, I need some old chaos heads and
take them.
No more, just the one.
Take them all. Nope. You can't just take one. You have to take them all. That's the other requirement.
Like my big terrain push for Legions Imperialis is all thanks to your Prusa.
The Prusa
that I've been
3D
borrowing for the last like 2 months or something like that, just to print out a bunch of, because I've got my resin printer.
Stuff looks cool too. The stuff he printed looks really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw it. Yeah, that's right. The
died all over it.
They look
There's
dead solar rocks
blood
everywhere.
and gears all over it.
Well, anyway. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a short break. We'll come back. We'll close some final thoughts and we'll close out the show at that point. All right, we're back to close out the show. And listen, I mean, I think for me, this is just a great episode to talk about, the dynamics of our group, but also dynamics of larger groups and how people come together and the value of this hobby as a whole. Like for me, that I think I got everything in there that I needed to say.
Yeah.
In our journey through this episode, if you will.
No amount of dollars spent on plastic crack will ever match the joy I've gotten from the people I've spent that time with. It's a small price to pay for like literally moving to 3-4 different communities, geographically pretty far apart, and making lifelong friends at each one of them. And step one was little plastic mans.
It's super interesting to see the evolution of not just our groups, but how we play and everything over the last, I don't know how long I've been in this hobby now, 16 years. I haven't been in as long as both of you, but even over 16, 17 years, it's been such a change of where we were. And when I look back, I'm like, what an immature approach I was taking back then. And I'm sure 5 years from now, I'll be like, what a stupid statement you just made, Carl. That's the nature of growth, though.
Right. Yeah. I was like, fingers crossed. Hopefully
growth,
that's what we all do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway,
we're definitely lucky in the group that we have. Just the size of it, the dynamics that we have, like to the point that people are calling us out on the podcast because we agree too much because we're friends first. And
sorry about that, guys.
Yeah,
we're really trying to find somebody to argue with us here.
Yeah.
Jody didn't do much of it either.
I don't know.
Why did I even bring you on?
I don't know.
Bringing up a bunch of good points and
you did have some really good points this episode.
Dude.
Thank you so much.
Broken clocks rise twice a day.
Listen, thanks for joining us, man. You're
always a pleasure to be.
You're always welcome. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I said it earlier in the show. Please do go leave us reviews in iTunes. We definitely appreciate, or whatever your podcast aggregator of choice is. Which is funny. You know what? I was screwing around the other day when I do dishes. We have one of those the Amazon Echo things in the kitchen, and you're like, hey, play whatever, Alexa, play whatever. And I was like, you know what? I go, hey, Alexa, play the Independent Characters podcast. And it's all playing episode 233 of the Independent Characters. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even know it was feeding through there. and then I was like, I listened to it a little bit. I stopped it. I was laughing. And then Shell came over. I go, hey, hon, I go, check this out. I go, hey, Alexa, play the Independent Characters podcast. It's all, resuming play of the, and it picked up right where it had left off. I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
We're in the future.
I know. So if you're using an Alexa,
the future is now.
Right there. I'm going to tell Alexa, leave a review for the Independent.
There you go.
Anyway, we absolutely appreciate reviews. You can write to us at carl@theindependentcharacters.com or josh@theindependentcharacters.com if you want to give us any direct messages. And, as you know, we have a great Facebook group. And last but not least, we do have a Patreon we're offering even more features now in the patron subscriptions because we're doing the hobby hangouts.
Yeah, join us for a live hobby hangout,
which we're bringing
special guests.
Yeah. Last time it was Caleb. We'll see who else we can get next time. Maybe we can get Jody.
Absolutely.
I thought you said they were special guests. Oh,
I did.
I see.
I think you're special.
Oh,
Special snowflake.
Yes. Now you're getting it. Anyway, it's a great way to support the show. That being said, we're gonna have a slight delay in a few things. We'll get this episode out on the 15th, but then I will be out for 3 weeks as I go to Australia. But we'll come back. You guys will get to talk about Adepticon and what transpired there.
So many games.
You're going.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I'm not going. I don't pay attention who's going. I know Josh is going. I know Aaron's going.
I'm going to be there.
You're going to be there.
Like everybody.
Is Aaliyah going?
No.
Oh, I know Aaron.
Somebody's got to earn money.
Oh, and Adon. Adon will be there. But we don't talk to Adon anymore. You can't talk on the show. So he's worthless to us.
Wow.
He's actually in the Bay Area. He's got some family stuff going on. So I'm going to see if I can't get a game in with him, hopefully before he goes back. Like he's rented an apartment for a short period of time. Like his parents are getting older and stuff. Arya, my dog, is losing her
signing
patience. So she's trying to get me to sign off. So anyway, I think that's it. You guys got anything else you want to
Well, can they comment on YouTube videos if they want to?
Oh, even more. Yes.
Absolutely.
Josh,
yeah. Well, so every episode here we have the video format option there, and I think there's definitely some value add there for
sure.
Just the communication. You want to see us laughing when we're all laughing. It's fun to see that with so much of communication being nonverbal anyways. But yeah, absolutely. Lot of just visuals to go with anything we're talking about: hobby progress, elite choices, games played, etc.
Yep.
Definitely check it out. I'm very happy with the medium there, and we're getting some really great community engagement. So
yeah, it's really fun.
Keep commenting, ask questions, whatever. We're always open to feedback. So.
And you haven't subscribed there, subscribe there. That's free.
Absolutely.
That's free. And we love your subscription there. All right. Well, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
This is Jody.
We're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where you are always a part of our gaming group.
And where sharing is caring.
And we hope the friendship we share here on the show mirrors the one at your own table.
It was really the journey all along that was the prize.
It wasn't the destination.
This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.